Hello and welcome to the Money Lap Live. This is our podcast about all motorsports. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill. But today, I know I keep saying this every time we do this, it's a really big show. We've got many guests. A West Coast correspondent in the form of Hunter Nemechek. We've got Ryan Vargas, Adam Stern, who actually is going to show up this time, I swear, and none other than the Australian Supercars champion of Australia, not the world. Brodie Kostecki will be here on the Money Lap. We've got F1 insider controversy, NASCAR Cup Series testing in Phoenix to go through, and many of the package discussions there. There's a short track incident that happened this past weekend, the snowball that we'll dissect. Landon would like to speak about golf balls for a little bit, which I can't quite figure out what that means and why, but we'll figure out later. Also, this is a special episode. It's number 33, my go-kart number, very near and dear to my heart. This is Money Lap Live. Let's go. Landon, rate my intro.
Oh, man, that was 10 out of 10. It was awesome.
Oh, thank you. I should say, Landon Cassill from Cassill's Couch at Cassill Motors, your friend in the car business here from Iowa. I'm in Stamford, Connecticut, at our Money Lap studios. We got a big show, as we said, and we're actually going to bring back something that we've had on the podcast normally. We haven't done the lives, Landon. We're going to do the PR lap again. We talk about ourselves for a bit.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're doing that. I feel like do we have any reviews about the live show?
We do have reviews. We got to point out that on Apple Podcasts, which is our largest reviews, we got 125 all 5-star reviews. We're crushing it over there. And we had a very recent one, easy for me to say, that said basically, this is before the live show. This is just before we went into the live. So we need some more Apple reviews. So if you're out there and you've liked the live show, tell us what you think of it in the Apple reviews. Give it 5 stars. Don't ruin our rating on this, please. I'm just kidding. You can do whatever you want. But he said this is a well-rounded racing podcast, Mr. Brian Silver. I am a fairly new listener, but I've really enjoyed this podcast. Parker and Landon have a wide range of knowledge on various aspects. Wow, we haven't completely fooled. Of racing and also motorsports business, media, sim driver setup. It allows both to offer unique insights I've found to be interesting in a way that other racing podcasts aren't. Thank you. Basically, he said if we did a series about different ways to get around a racetrack, he would watch that. And all in all, it's a 5-star product. They keep you on your toes with seamless ad transitions. So you get an A+ on your ads. Thank you, Brian.
I am so flattered every time I hear these well-written, thought out reviews.
Yep.
It's a great compliment.
It is really nice of them. On Spotify, we're lagging a little bit. We're at a 4.9 out of 5 stars and 96 reviews. And one of the most recent ones was Todd Gullery 12 days ago. Great podcast, 2 exclamation points. Love that you all cover all the racing series. Thanks, Todd G. Appreciate it, Todd G. I like the sign off. Letting us know.
We got one on YouTube
and some other news. We went well over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube since we started this endeavor. We're up to 1,250, I guess, at this point, basically. So we're moving and grooving there. We've had some nice comments. For all of you watching on YouTube, we appreciate it. And it was cool last week to see how big last week's live went. So that was awesome. It was our biggest one yet. And if you're not subscribed, go to our YouTube channel. If you're watching this, you definitely are on our YouTube channel. But if you are listening to this and not on our YouTube channel, please go subscribe. We're making a big push over there. We've got a lot of video content plans as we have discovered we have so many capabilities we had no idea that we were capable of in the video realm, I guess, as a team. So we'll see what's out there. We do. One more thing on the PR lap, by the way.
Shout out to the chat. Because I know that last review mentioned the chat. So shout out to the chat. That is our lesson from the streamer world that it definitely pays to engage the chat. So shout out to the YouTube chat. If you're just tuning in, sorry, it is too late to be the first commenter because we've already got some conversation going in the chat. But
it's already moving. And as we've seen with these, the viewership just continually grows over the next 3 hours. So join us on this motorsports adventure. This road trip that we're taking through the motorsports world. As I mentioned, though, this is the PR lap. and we get to talk about ourselves, I want to take a little bit of a diversion, take an exit off the highway here of motorsports into our personal lives. This past weekend, I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I had one of these, probably the funniest moments I've ever had in my life, which I texted you. You never responded to it. So I'm really just distraught about that.
Well,
you didn't. You
okay,
never
so
responded.
This whole thing is news to me. I not only did I not apparently not respond to this, I still don't know what you're talking about. So I must not have even read it.
It would be new to you as well. So I met up with some old friends of mine. We're in Brooklyn. We end up going to a certain bar establishment that I'm not going to name the name of because I don't want to blow up their spot for this person. But nonetheless,
Wow, gatekeeping.
Should I just say where it is? I just feel like that's kind of rude to say where people were.
Can we get our Gen Zs in the house and call out the gatekeeping?
What? Okay. Yeah, hold on. We have some Gen Zs.
I went to this bar establishment, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because, I'm too cool for that.
Is that against the Gen Z mantra?
I don't know if it's against the Gen Z mantra or if Gen Z invented it or both. I don't know. But like
millennials, we hold back, all right? We hold back. We do that. We try to keep a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? We keep a little bit of keep it elusive a bit. Anyway,
so you were at a place in Brooklyn that you're not going to tell us.
Yeah, and I'm there. We had dinner and then we go over to this like lounge bar area. We're hanging out there, and I see this woman walk in like a leopard jacket, and I recognize her, and I assumed, I'm like, oh, that's our friend. And so like at the moment that I'm about to be like, hey, what's up? Nice to see you. It just sort of hits me that I don't know this person. And the reason I know of them, I just don't personally know them, nor do they know I exist. Because then I turn to my friend's girlfriend and I just say, who is the girl that's in all of the rom-coms? And she just, without even skipping a beat, says, Emma Roberts. And I go, yeah, that's her right there. I almost just waved to her saying, hey, what's up? Nice to see you again. She has no idea who I am. We've never met.
Which if I think I know, if you were at where I think you were at, that would actually be like a violation of the bylaws.
It'd be a major violation of where I was.
So yeah, you cannot approach folks that you don't know.
But you know there's a phenomenon with this. She could be a Money Lab listener, which would be interesting. But there's a phenomenon with this, where like people believe because of famous people they see on TV a lot, maybe reality show people, podcast hosts, Money Lab host. They believe like they know them because you see them so often. And I literally slipped into that moment of like, oh, I know this girl. Like she's like from high school. Like we grew up together or something. And then it just, that split second before I did something really embarrassing, I caught myself.
You could have done do I know you? And she would have been like, I'm a celebrity.
I'm like a world-renowned celebrity.
Okay, also so my girlfriend. I'm sorry that I don't. You can roast me for this, but who's Emma Roberts?
You know her. Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. That is like no. You the second you see her, I didn't know her name obviously until my friend's girlfriend did it, but I was like, I knew who she was immediately. She's been in a lot more than just rom-coms. My girlfriend Shannon would like to she'd like to point out that she's been in a lot more. She wanted to stand up for Emma Roberts, that she's not just a rom-com actress, but it's what I knew her from. So
I mean I know her, and come on, Landon, you
Gen Z knows her.
Come on. I mean, I knew of her. I didn't even have to see a photo. I knew immediately who she was. Come on, Landon.
Generation Gen Z knows Emma Roberts, as heard here from our Gen Z panel expert, Joshua Mendoza. How old are you, Josh?
I'm 25, but let me get a photo, and here we go. There we go. There is
Please figure this out.
Boom. We got a photo. There you go. Zach. There you go. Perfect.
Now you know her.
Hang on. Let me see this.
No, he doesn't know.
I mean,
really? That's just.
Oh,
all right.
My goodness.
Well, we're gonna move on from this.
Sorry,
I'm
not.
You need. I don't know what to do. I mean, she's like a global, world-renowned actress, not just in rom-coms. And you have no idea.
Okay, I feel like I need to actually see her in a movie that I've seen.
Okay,
I can't name
it'll click for me, but it's not really clicking for me right now.
The reason she most
gosh, can we talk about racing?
Yeah, let's move on. Anyway, we established I have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to famous people. Don't come to the money lap for the.
I feel like we're
Hollywood true story.
We either need to start talking about racing, or we just need to take this into a like from The Office, where we just debate on whether she's hot or attractive or whatever that was. What was that episode of The Office where they talk about Hillary Swank?
We're moving on.
Or they're trying to debate if she's hot.
Oh,
we're done with famous people.
Now I can't remember who she is. I'm trying to picture it in my mind. We're moving on. Done with the PR lap.
Let's talk about
the PR lap. If you like Money Lap and you want incredible journalism like we just did there for 10 minutes, and establish that we know nobody famous in the world, then check out themoneylap.com and subscribe to our newsletter where you'll get more great stuff like that. Big news in the motorsports world that came out yesterday around 10 a.m. Eastern time on the eastern seaboard of the United States. It was announced over in Italy, where Justin Marks was, that Trackhouse is going global. They have acquired one of the 11 teams in MotoGP. One thing I do want to say to all the listeners from last week that remember this, we said Justin Marks would be on this episode. He couldn't be here today, so he's been gracious enough, though, tomorrow to do basically a sit-down. I'm calling it a sit-down, even though we'll probably be in two places. I'm hoping he'll be sitting. Long-form conversation.
Lately.
We have been, and he has. A lot of people have been standing up.
Not me. I'm just sitting on the couch.
The Cassill couch. He and I are going to discuss all things MotoGP. We're going to dive deep into that, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But pretty cool news. I mean, just for American racing, there's and we'll go into that episode, but there's an amazing amount of success that Americans have had from the rider level in MotoGP. Yeah. But as the owners, this is kind of uncharted territory. So this is going to be really fascinating, and to see sort of how they leverage it and what they do, combining NASCAR and MotoGP, and just, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of interesting things to unpack there.
That's going to be exciting. I wish I was going to be part of that interview with Justin. I will be on an airplane at the time, of the recording, but undoubtedly going to be a great conversation. Hopefully he gives you guys enough time to talk about MotoGP, NASCAR, all kinds of things, Trackhouse. I am curious to, from your perspective, Parker, you made a really good point that I hadn't thought of yet, that, American riders have success and have obviously made it through the MotoGP pipeline. Owners haven't. What is it? Where are these American riders coming up with their skills, talent, platform to be able to make it to MotoGP? Because in F1, right, like American drivers, we have no respect, right? We have no
none.
And maybe there's more options in auto racing as opposed to motorcycle racing, where American talent can go to IndyCar and NASCAR and find success. So but like what is it about the MotoGP pipeline that allows for American talent?
Well, I was actually doing some digging on this, and we'll definitely dive into it more tomorrow with Justin. But I believe there was a major respect for the AMA road racing level over here, and you had a lot of manufacturer support too. You had Honda that invested heavily around the Nicky Hayden days. He was able to parlay that into going over to MotoGP. Colin Edwards, he was someone who got over to World Superbike, which was equivalent, sort of to being the highest level of production bikes, and then was able to get to MotoGP. Ben Spies with Suzuki, he was able to do the same thing and get over there. And obviously Nicky Hayden won the championship in 2006. So and then before that, I think, who paved the way was Schwantz and some of those guys that really set the tone of like, hey, Americans can be very successful. And so I think they just had a lot of, because of that, they had a respect.
There was a breakthrough. at some period of time, whether it's from AMA or those other, any specific rider, like there was a breakthrough that created, call it a fishing hole of talent.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because we've seen things like that in all kinds of motorsports, but in NASCAR in particular, because NASCAR talent can come from anywhere. And so we go through these periods of time where the drivers come from short track racing, or, all of the teams are recruiting dirt track drivers. And obviously Jeff Gordon was kind of the first of a generation of drivers coming from dirt sprint car racing into NASCAR, right? And that sparked, maybe a wave, but kind of a wave, I guess, into the success of Jeff Gordon through the 90s. Probably inspired a wave of drivers like Casey Kane and Ryan Newman and Tony Stewart, right? Which then compound on themselves, and to the point that where we're at today with Kyle Larson and Toyota being so heavily invested in dirt sprint car racing and midgets and whatnot. So it's interesting. I mean, it's like maybe the US had its opportunity with AMA and MotoGP and created just that respect, like you said. It's a good way to put it.
I think that was it, and I think to compare it for the car racing fans out there, because MotoGP, for whatever reason, even with that success, has not gotten the level of viewership over here nearly compared to car racing. Right now, I believe in the world, it's like the second most watched form of motorsport consumed ever, which makes sense. It's global, and it's the F1 of motorcycle racing, and motorcycle culture is a niche in itself, and a very big popular niche, right? But the thing to compare it to is, on the flip side of that, why did not more drivers go from IndyCar to Formula One? And I think if you look at the time period of the late 80s, post Mario Andretti, in the late 80s, it was more lucrative to be in IndyCar. So, and into the 90s, when you had Nigel Mansell come over here in the early 1990s, the PPG IndyCar World Series, they were making way more money than the F1 drivers. And at that time, Bernie Ecclestone was worried that CART was going to overtake Formula One as the global racing series. So I think, there was just less of an incentive. And then you have Villeneuve, who eventually goes over. He wins the championship, but for whatever reason, doesn't really garner respect. You have Zanardi, who goes over, doesn't have a ton of success. They tried it with Cristiano D'Amata. He doesn't have success. Sebastian Bourdais goes over, doesn't have success. And so by the time you get to 2010s, our American open wheel doesn't have the respect that you have on the motorcycle side, with Nicky Hayden win the championship in 06 and Ben Spies getting the chance. So really fascinating.
I mean, it could literally take one driver to change that for an entire generation, right? It could be one driver that gets an opportunity in F1, wins, and if they came through a unique pipeline as an American driver, maybe through maybe GM finds success in Formula One or something like that it could just carve out this entirely new pipeline into F1 for American talent, or really any region for that matter. Doesn't have to be American talent. It could be Asian talent. Could be, wherever there's motorsports that's trying to break into F1.
I think there's two guys who could really make it happen. There's one guy who probably had the chance, but I don't know if it would have had the effect because he wasn't over here long enough before he tried to make the switch, and he has been a contractual disaster, and that's Alex Palou, obviously, what he's been able to do. But the two guys on my mind that I think go over to Formula One, have success, and re-change the thought process behind the value of IndyCar. Now, you do have a little bit of an issue with the FIA super license situation, how they value IndyCar. But Pato O'Ward, who, wink, wink, we're trying to get on this show, by the way. I'd really love to talk to him. He's going to be the reserve driver for McLaren next year, as well as being the full-time IndyCar driver. The other one, I think, obviously has been rumored for a while. He had some of the super license issues. Otherwise, he might have even been in Formula One already. That's Colton Herta. I just think those two could really do some damage over there that would also change the perception and the thought process behind our talent level coming out of America. So, and I know Pato's not American, but he's raced at the American open wheel.
Yeah, but those drivers, I mean, they've gone through the American. What they would do is give credibility to the American talent pool of motorsports, right? So even though the drivers aren't natively American themselves, they came through the American system, right? Or at least IndyCar.
Yep.
Is their final stop before F1. If maybe that's what we're trying to articulate is like, if you see an American driver or an IndyCar driver go from F1 and have reasonable enough success to impress actual, native F1 and endemic people, decision makers, then that could be a watershed moment, or what do they call it? A big moment for American motorsport, because then people are going to go, okay, whatever's happening in the IndyCar is capable of preparing drivers to be top F1 talent.
Definitely. I want to put it out to the chat. If you're listening to the chat, if you're listening on the podcast, you will have no way to tell us this, but maybe through Twitter or something. But if you're on the chat, let us know what you think. Who would change the perception of American open-wheel drivers going over to Formula One and therefore giving more Americans and American open-wheel drivers a chance in Formula One? Let us know in the chat. We'll talk about it a little bit. I should say to all our viewers out there that are starting to trickle in here as we go through this, we've got Hunter Nemechek coming live from Phoenix as our West Coast correspondent from the NASCAR Cup Series test out there, a huge test, and he's been observing the whole thing, so he'll dive into that. We've got Ryan Vargas on the show today. We have Adam Stern actually showing up, I promise. We've actually tested it already to make sure his technology works. And then last but of course not least, we have the 2023 Supercars champion of Australia coming on. That's Brodie Kostecki here on the Money Lap later on. So stick with us. Stay tuned. It's going to be fun. We have a lot of stuff to dive into, though, Landon. One of our own, our Gen Z expert, producer Josh, raced in a 24-hour race this past weekend. But he didn't drive in it. So I don't even know why we're giving him a shout-out on this. How did your team do quickly, Josh?
We did great. It was the first time for everyone. We had two very new drivers. One, when I told him to come in and box, was very confused on the term and why I was telling him box. He thought, is there a box on track or what have you? all that stuff. So that was fun. We had to teach a couple of racing terms. We had rain throughout the race. Let me get through this yellow flag here. There you go. And we broke a CV shaft, and we went to the parts store and proceeded to grab the wrong CV shaft. So then had to come back, return that one. And you know how it is. The AutoZone parts catalog definitely did not realize that was the incorrect spline count. So we lost 2 hours, 45 minutes, but we had a great time. Two Pro 4 racers who were just having an absolute blast. And all I can say is Lemons Racing is the pinnacle of motorsports. I don't care what anyone else says. If you have not raced in a Lemons race, you are not a motorsports driver. And that's also just to get you two to come out and do one. So if you guys want to...
Well, I got fired, by the way. You forgot, you buried the lead here. Before the race, my name was on the car, crossed out. I was called literally 6 hours before the race while I'm here in Connecticut, told I've been fired. Now, I wasn't planning on getting on a flight anyway, nor was I going to go out there and race this thing with you guys, this death trap. I saw some onboard footage. Those races are basically signing up to get smashed and put in a wall. So I didn't go, and I had no intention of going, but I did get fired for the first time from a ride I never really wanted to be in. So that's a new one.
It's no different than a cup race for any new driver who's never raced in a cup race on a road course. It's basically the same thing.
Wasn't the first team I've been
There you go, just survival then. Keep it on the road.
Yeah. All right, Josh. Good job. Congrats to you guys. Y2K Racing, friends of the pod.
Thank you.
Did a big race. Landon, I have big news. Huge news. Do you want to hear
Let's hear it.
McLaren signed another tech company as a sponsor.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Something new and different.
What did they sign?
Udemy. It is now the something or something official learning partner of McLaren. Not to be confused with their probably official reading partner, which would be some sort of publishing company. Their official, which would be a tech publishing company, I'm assuming. Their official grammar partner would be Grammarly, I'm assuming. And as we like to say here in the Money Lab, are you a tech company unless you sponsor McLaren? Big news. We'll move on.
Interesting. Well, it will be fun to see how long that lasts and what they get out of it.
What do they learn? Yeah.
Hats off to Zach.
We have
Brown,
a sponsor,
though,
by the way.
His team. I mean, he's an absolute pro.
He is. He's done what you know what? I only say it because I'm jealous. We would like all of their tech sponsors to be on the Money Lab. That would be tremendous. So, but we do have a partner, by the way.
We do have a partner. So are you handing this off to me?
I am.
We are
this has gone seamless. I tried twice to hand it to you to seamlessly transfer to the ad read, and we have completely dropped the ball here. 4 episodes into the Money Lab Live, you can tell we've gotten
whatever that sponsor is. Whatever that sponsor is at McLaren, they might be a technical partner, but they may not be a diecast partner to be able to make a McLaren diecast. I suppose McLaren probably still has some kind of diecast. If you need the McLaren F1 diecast, then you need to check out spoilerdiecast.com. With one of the largest inventories in the industry, they have over 800 unique products currently in stock, including diecast and apparel offerings for NASCAR, dirt, sprint cars, IndyCar, and F1. So we need to check out if there's a McLaren diecast out there. And next year, I suppose, with their new sponsor on it. With their pre-order system in place, you can be sure to get your hands on the latest diecast releases without the long wait. What's even better, all orders ship same or next day. They offer free shipping on orders over $20. Use the promo code MONEYLAP for a little razzle-dazzle on your order. Check it out.
Bam.
SpoilerDiecast.com. Get your racing fix, and let's keep an eye out for those just constantly evolving McLaren liveries. Sorry for that, Parker.
No, that you picked up the ball and got it back a little bit. We were almost out of bounds, to use some sort of sports ball analogy.
We fumbled it several times, and I almost just had to jump on the ball.
Yeah, and you were far outside track limits, but somehow got it back within. The FIA would still penalize you though, so you're done. Go to SpoilerDiecast.com. Great partner of ours. Love them. They do have a McLaren diecast for sale, by the way. It's I think from when Daniel Ricciardo was still there. So a couple of those and some of the worst ones. And we got a giveaway going on. I should announce we've got a pretty cool giveaway going on right now. If you just go to our socials or our link tree or anywhere, any of our places, it's even the link of this YouTube. We're going to give away in December of F1 team merch from the F1 Fanatic store and 3 Kyle Larson Indy 500 diecast from Spoiler Diecast. Those, basically, you'll get those as soon as they're available. So that'll be pretty cool. We do need to jump into some other news. Speaking of the FIA, Formula One news. Logan Sargent, speaking of Americans in open wheel and in F1, is back. He has been re-signed to Williams. It was up for discussion post Abu Dhabi, although I had a feeling, knowing some of the intentions of Williams financially and some sort of what they're trying to do sponsorship wise, he would be back. Of course he is back.
So what?
I think he deserves it.
So what did the deal there? I mean, because you were called that better than I did. I was kind of basing off of performance. Do you feel like they're just deepening their investment in American talent / partnerships? Is that the goal?
100%. I think it's 100%.
Does he actually bring money?
No, he does not. But I believe, at the end of the day, they are trying to align with the American audience. Having the only American on the grid is a way to do it. You look at Haas saying they're an American team, McLaren, which says they want to be the America's team, and obviously have tried through content and aligning with content creators and different series to be there. And obviously with IndyCar, they want to be thought of as America's team, and this is Williams' chance to align with Americans. Yes? You have a question from the audience?
So here's a theory then. If that is their strategy, then I wonder if his lifespan for this strategy is somewhat in timing with the Andretti program. Not trying to tie them together like he would drive for them. I'm saying if Williams right now has a corner on the American market as in terms of an American driver, does like once Andretti shows up and probably is going to be Captain America of F1, does that all of a sudden diminish any edge that they had with Logan? And would that be when Logan officially goes on the hot seat and Williams would need to change their strategy if they haven't like secured a legitimate long-term American partnership?
I can't foresee the future. I believe, he did pick up his performance, by the way. That is, that's some deep state conspiracy stuff here, which I have no problem diving into.
Well, I'm not saying that's deep state. I'm just looking at like more strategic.
No, I think you are. I think that the part of the hesitation, we've had this discussion, the hesitation of having Andretti come in there has been this idea that they could potentially take over this idea of being America's team, right? When McLaren has gone for that, Williams is, I think Doralton Capital is a U.S.-based capital group. That's, part of their connection to America. It's sponsored by Duracell, Michelob Ultra, so on and so forth. You've got, who else was I thinking of? Oh, Haas, thinking they're kind of American, obviously owned by an American owner, so on and so forth. So I think that, the growth over here, they all see the opportunity in the companies that want to align with F1 teams based out of America.
So Caleb in our chat right now just made a good point. He said next year silly season is gonna be nuts with like half the drivers' contracts being up. Has F1 been seeing shorter contracts, or are we just seeing like a contract year? Because remember in NASCAR, let me get to my point on this. A decade ago, more than a decade, probably a decade ago or longer, when multi-year driver contracts was way more common, we would have these like quiet years and then you would have a big year, right? Because it just contracts would just fall on the same year and you'd have 10 drivers moving, right? Well, when sponsorship models changed, teams changed, driver market got tougher on the driver side of things. It was harder for drivers to make demands. The driver contracts went from being 2, 3, 5-year deals to like 1-year deals, even for top-notch drivers. Jamie McMurray's deals were, so I guess I shouldn't name him specifically because I don't intimately know his deals, but like drivers at that caliber were getting 1-year deals, right? Which made the NASCAR silly season like wasn't even a special thing anymore. It was just an annual thing, right? Every year between July and October, it just was silly season. It wasn't an every other year. It used to be like almost an every other year, or maybe, it was an every year thing, but it was just like some years were worse than others. Now it's like it's every year. Everybody's on a year by year deal. Is F1, seeing that, or is it just is next year just a big year?
I think it's just a big year. I think because you look at simply the numbers and how fast they've grown, right? Just in the last 4 years. And we'll dive into this, talk about the NASCAR TV deal in a little bit. And obviously we have Adam Stern coming on later on in the show for real this time, who can answer many questions like that, right? But I suspect what you have happening is talent, for one, is becoming very valuable because the money is getting so big and the sponsorship out there, the attention from sponsorship so large that not only do the drivers that can perform really well, can command, have a lot of leverage, they also can be someone like Charles Leclerc who says, hey, look, I'm also a get for sponsors and partners. That's a big deal, right? Because they have so much attention, such a large following right now. Speaking of which, it has been reported that he was apparently getting a deal done with Ferrari. So we'll see. That's a gargantuan number, by the way, in tens and tens of millions of dollars per year. Which, you know what? The guy is probably the fastest qualifier in all of F1. If he can convert that to race stuff, I see that working out. I wanted to. So let me finish that thought. That would say, help him. Yeah, a little bit. Money makes you go faster. Hey, if you're an owner out there, let's try something. The thing to me, though, that's happening is, so because of that, these drivers are getting a little longer contracts. I think at the other end of the field, though, because no one's really able to bring money anymore, like you've just got to be hired on performance, it's going to make the leeway a lot shorter. We've seen that for the Red Bull model, right, where they rip drivers in and out of rides willy-nilly. Nick DeVries got fired this year, right? Just like no time. Logan has been given the benefit of the doubt, and I think the American side of things has helped him. I don't think to his, do I think he would only be there because of it? No, I think his performance improved. And if you're a team making that investment and you just hired this guy straight up, maybe it's worth it to say, why don't we give it one more year or a half a year?
Yeah.
See what happens here. So I think, you have two ends of the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, there's going to be long-term contracts, no doubt, at the higher end of the field, because you're going to want to lock in these drivers, align them with sponsors for as long as possible. And if they can perform really highly, then you're just, with the money continuing to go up in terms of the rights and the rights fees for the races, the media rights, and the sponsorship that F1's making, and knowing they split it 50-50, basically, you're guaranteeing your financial future. So one more thing, on your point about that era for NASCAR drivers, I'll never forget a couple years ago, Kurt Busch turning to me at Phoenix. He had still not signed a deal or announced a deal for the next year. And he turned to me and he said, Parker, I've gotten 4 contracts from 4 different teams, and they all were boilerplate the same thing. He said, what's my leverage? And I was like, whoa. And he's like, it was right around the time the RTA showed up and so on and so forth. And it was like, okay, yep. That's how it goes.
The drivers missed the boat when they did not organize during that time period. They fumbled the ball. They fumbled the bag, fumbled the ball, whatever you want to call it. When the teams organized, the drivers made an attempt at organizing and failed. And I think that they cost themselves. I think the drivers probably cost themselves some long-term leverage in these deals. They probably would have had a seat at the table, a better seat at the table with these deals had they gotten organized during that time.
Let's dive into a couple more topics here as we rumble towards John Hunter Nemechek being on the show here later as our West Coast correspondent. You know what? Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Our production team was asking for something. We're not going to do it. They wanted to show a meme. It was a pretty funny meme. Just put it up. Here's Logan Sargent signing with his Williams deal with James Vowles, and here's what they felt it looked like. This is the office meme.
It does kind of look that way.
The my boss office meme. I would love to have Logan on our show.
I think that is for those that are not watching on video, those just listening on audio. That is Michael Scott and Ed Truck shaking hands.
Well done.
The day that Michael Scott was hired at Dunder Mifflin.
It's one of my favorite memes. It was actually one of the ads we ran for the Money Lap for a while. Josh is laughing hysterically, Gen Z man, in the background right now. I don't know if I can hear him. Someone said, Daniel Longworth said, NASCAR drivers being too gutless to unionize will forever haunt them. Yeah, probably. So, in the NASCAR world.
I mean, we could talk about that for a second. I think they were probably gutless. I think.
You were in that era. Weren't you in those chats?
Yeah, it was part of that stuff. I mean, what
was the problem?
Just getting just sharing a vision, getting a shared vision, and picking the right action items to organize and take the next step. You just have such a wide range of drivers. I mean, you got at the very tippy top, you had drivers that were probably making 15 million plus a year. I don't want to say on the tail end, but at the peak of their careers. Some of them at the tail end of their careers making $10 million that knew that, they only had a few years left, and they could say all they want, that they want to leave a legacy or they want to, set up for the next generation of drivers. But it's hard to do that without still taking a risk. And then all the way down at the bottom end of it, you had rookies and part-time drivers, drivers from the Xfinity series that had tenure and experience that making no money. And those are guys that are like, hell yeah, let's organize, let's get a message going. And it's hard to get those two groups of drivers on the same level and align in the same vision. And the teams are able to do it. The teams I want to say that the teams struggled doing it and had to fight for themselves to get on the same page and organize, and they all have a similar business model, right? So I think
drivers Do you think they lacked a leader, or was it more just you're saying like there was you're just such a wide range of differing interests at that time?
I think that I don't want to say they lacked a leader. I mean, there were leaders amongst the group there that were very vocal and cared and, you know, willing to make their own investments in trying to get the ball rolling. But I don't know. I think that just collectively they couldn't pull the trigger on a direction. And I think that the drivers probably lack, I don't want to say that they lacked business sense, because I'm not trying to just say that the drivers are all dumb or, you know, but
I don't think that's the case. No.
I think that there was probably, I don't know, they lacked something there that was probably business or support related, advisor related. You know, maybe they didn't hire the right advisors quick enough, or themselves have the right advisors. You know, because even some of the top level drivers, if they're just a driver, right? I know right now Denny Hamlin owns a team now, and Kevin Harvick owns an agency now. But it's like even those top drivers, Jimmy Johnson, for example, at that time, I mean, yeah, he has smart people around him, but it's still a small team, right? Of people advising him. And so, and you had drivers like Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon and Denny Hamlin at the time, Kevin Harvick, and they all had maybe some conflicting interests because they're prospective team owners, you know. And I think, I don't know if Kevin still owned KHI at the time. Dale Jr. obviously had JRM. Jeff Gordon has, you know, obviously knew at that time where his future lied in Hendrick Motorsports, even though it wasn't really happening at the moment. He was still driving. So it's just that I think all those little factors probably made it difficult for the drivers to collectively align in their interests and say, all right, we're going to establish something that that is common for all drivers, that represents all drivers in one voice to NASCAR and to our team owners. And we as a group are willing to take some risk in doing that. It might have to get ugly to do it. And they weren't able to align and do that. And that might be okay. I don't know. Because I even look at myself, right? I don't know what it would have taken for me to let it get ugly, right? This was like, I was a pretty new driver at the time. Wouldn't have been hard to replace me. So
you don't say.
Know? So it's like, that was my livelihood. And it's everybody's livelihood, but like, you know, it was my life. Like I couldn't financially.
You couldn't take a year off. You're saying
I couldn't take a year off back then. So, you know, I could have talked to Big Gain and signed up and paid the dues and joined the club. And then when it came time to go into Daytona, I probably would have chosen a race car. So, I'm not sure, you know, but I think there's just a lot of differing agendas there, and they dropped the ball on it and it didn't happen. And, you know, obviously the funny thing is, like, you can just call a spade. And I know we got to move to our next segment here, but to call a spade on it, it's like, all right, the charters happened, the RTA happened, and immediately after, drivers lost leverage. Salaries started going down, deals started getting shorter, funded drivers started taking seats, right? And so it's I would say that's there's some correlation there, obviously.
Hey, we can dive into that more later on, but we do have our first guest here today. As we mentioned, NASCAR Cup Series is testing in Phoenix yesterday and today, and our next guest hails from a racing family that loves the front row. He won 7 races in 2023, including taking my chance at a cowboy hat in Texas, and I'm sure he has beat you, Landon, a time or two. He will be driving the number 42 for Legacy Motor Club in 2023 in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's our West Coast correspondent on today's show. It's Hunter Nemechek on the Money Lap Live. Welcome to the show, my man. Appreciate it.
What's going on? How are you guys?
Hey, how's it going, man? Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Are you in a rental car right now?
I am. It's a little loud here. The lounge of the hauler is taking over. So didn't know exactly where to go do it. So my rental car was the next best place.
No worries. You know, many decisions have ended up in that same place. So let's talk about why you're out at Phoenix. NASCAR decided that they wanted to do this test to work on some of that short track package. You're out there with your team, Legacy Motor Club, observing. What are you seeing? You're our correspondent on the ground in Phoenix right now. What is some of your earliest impressions from yesterday into today?
Man, NASCAR has definitely thrown a lot of different variables at the car as far as package changes and different tire compounds and whatnot. So it's been neat to be able to be here and listen in and hear what Eric has had to say, as well as some of the other drivers that are here. Just trying to learn as much as I can while being out here about these packages, short track packages, road course packages, wherever they decide to end up running, the things that they're testing. So it's been interesting for sure. I don't know if they've made gains or not necessarily made gains or have found exactly what they're looking for. But everything is through trial and error, right? So I think the biggest thing for everyone that is here is just learning what different things do. They've had a couple mock races, which have been fun to watch, with the different packages that they've provided. So I think they have a few more today within the test plan that are going to be exciting to watch. As much as it is exciting to watch, I wish I was driving.
I bet.
So not a so it sounds like they don't you won't get a shot to drive at this test or get any seat time over the next day or two.
No, so today is the final day out here. I was hoping that I was going to get my shot to hop in and get some seat time, but it's been good to at least be out here with Legacy Motor Club and Ben Bayshore, crew chief, our engineers, kind of our 42 team, and all the powers and that be within the engineering side, as well as just listening to Eric and Dave and how they communicate and learning about things that they want to try or have tried in the past, and just trying to learn as much as I can so that when we go into 2024 and we start off our year, we can 100% learn each other's lingo and be on the same page communication wise.
What going back to the tests and the packages and what they're testing out and trying, what seems to be moving the needle the most, just from your perspective right now? I mean, it sounds like they've tried tires, they've tried aero. What's more sensitive?
I mean, the aero side, I feel like has been somewhat sensitive. I don't know if it's necessarily the direction that they want, or the drivers that are here want. Tire compounds have definitely been interesting to see what they've brought and how they've changed handling and grip and lap times and different things of that sort. So to me, just from a visual aspect, it seems like tires have been the biggest thing that has moved the needle, as far as more grip, lack of grip, and on both sides of that spectrum.
What is their goal right now? What do you know what their objective is?
To be honest, I don't necessarily know. I think a lot of guys want these cars to handle a little bit better in traffic, compared to some of the racing that we've seen. But it's with the Cup cars, at least compared to the Xfinity cars and even the Truck Series, it seems like the Cup Series and the Truck Series are a little bit more aligned, as far as dirty air goes and turbulent air and how they get tight behind cars and different things of that sort. Whereas the Xfinity cars, you don't really have that big balance shift, and you're able to drive right up to the bumper of guys and not necessarily lose the nose as bad as you would in a truck or the Cup car. So I think just trying to make them race a little bit better. I wouldn't necessarily say drive better or drive worse, but trying to make the final product a little bit better.
And one, what's unique about us three here, we've all driven the Xfinity car in its current generation. We've all driven the next gen car a little bit, although I have the least experience. I only got to do it once. But I think one of the things I saw, John, was the underside, like what they're trying to do in the underside. I saw some photos. You have the splitter that's raised, and then even like I saw one photo of Larson where the rear diffuser is basically gone. Like that was the thing when I drove that car that was so focused, right? Was this idea of like getting this diffuser as close to the ground. And so for us as drivers, it was a mental shift of don't think about the tire, that sort of thing. Just think about like, hey, how are you keeping the aero platform on this car? That's what we're trying to do, right? Don't think about the ride quality. It's all aero platform. Have you seen any indications in talking to Eric or the data, like when they removed that diffuser wherever back there, do you not worry about that as much? Is there any indications on that, like that it's changing some of the thought process for the team and the driver in that sense, or not really?
Yeah, I definitely think that removing the rear diffuser has changed a little bit for sure, as far as handling characteristics and how it has made the cars drive. I don't know if it's necessarily a better product or not from doing that. But then again, I definitely think that taking some of the downforce away, I would say, and less reliance on that rear diffuser, in theory, it should create less turbulent air and make the cars race a little bit better behind one another, just not relying on all of that air to be on the rear diffuser in order to go fast. So talking with Eric and some of the other drivers here, I think C-Bell is probably one of the biggest advocates for taking downforce away or making them slip and slide around, which makes sense from his background. So it's definitely been interesting to hear all of the different drivers' perspectives and see what they've had to say so far.
My hesitation with that, and it's hard to find a driver that will fight for downforce. So I'm with the majority on typically wanting downforce off of our cars, but I feel like we're running out of ammunition for that argument with this car, because this car does not have much downforce, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw it too with the whole lift splitter thing. Like I don't think it did what they thought it was going to do. And I'm wondering if we've just kind of running out of bullets when it comes to pointing at downforce to be the issue here.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I don't have a ton of experience in this next gen car in order to give my full 2 cents, like some of the other guys here are able to do, from racing it week after week for the last 2 years. So I definitely think that there's some things that you can point your finger at as a possibility of areas to look at or work on. But then again, the downforce side, I kind of feel like it's a double-edged sword, and I don't know how you guys feel about that. But you can take downforce away and make them slip and slide around. But then again, if you don't have enough downforce to lean on and to feel somewhat secure in the race car, you're not able to ship it in the corner and try and dive bomb guys or be confident enough to move around to find different grip and to try and pass and different things of that sort. So I definitely think that there's a fine line there.
I've always felt that I guess that when people talk about it, we just talk about downforce, right? And you don't really gauge it off of anything. And the way I've kind of pictured it in my mind, or when I have these conversations, I'm thinking more of just overall grip and where is it coming from, right? I like our cars to have lots of grip, right? I like to go fast. I like the cars to be responsive because that's where you have the most feel as a driver. And then of course, typically drivers, and you and I come from the same short track background, we like to have cars that fall off in grip and the tires wear, and then that feel changes. But like when I think about grip, I think, okay, well, where is it coming from? And so when we talk about taking downforce off the cars, I always think, well, you still have to replace it with something, right? So you want to take downforce off the car, replace it with mechanical grip, so therefore you still have feel and you still have this speed in the car or the capability in the car. Like, if you have no downforce and no tire and you just have a numb, sliding, slick car, then that's how you can also have bad racing there too.
I've driven that, by the way. Just so you both know, back in 2013, the Gen 6 car, when they were first trying to figure out the package for it, we went on like the lowest downforce setting they'd had in 30 years at Kansas, which was a repave. And it was that exact thing. And you talk about being on edge, John Hunter. It was like driving on a knife edge the whole way around the track. And I was like, yeah, that might be interesting because you'll have a lot of wrecks. I was like, so it can go too far in that sense, a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. And I think that from some of the drivers' comments of the different packages that we've run here, some are for it and some are against it. So who knows where we end up? I know that a couple of the packages that they're going to run today are very interesting and intriguing, in my opinion, and listening to the drivers kind of talk about it in their meeting with the NASCAR folks. And so hopefully something kind of comes about from that. But it definitely excited from the standpoint of the direction that they're trying to try today, compared to some of the things that they may have tried yesterday. But you don't know until you try it, right?
Yep.
So I want to make one last point on this. That's kind of maybe a plant a seed and something that we haven't discussed before. But it's really, I want to applaud NASCAR for trying things. Right, NASCAR more than ever is willing to develop ideas, take them to the track, see how it works. Right, it seems like we do that more than we've ever done. And
yep.
I wonder if I think NASCAR is just more willing to do that right now. So that's cool. And that's probably a big push of that. But I wonder if it's the standardization of the next gen itself that's allowing for that to happen, right? Where you don't have all these different teams developing and manufacturing their own cars. So when it comes to an aero change, the teams have to like do way more of their own manufacturing to try something and to try it at a test, where now it's like the cars are all the same. It's a standardized component. So the ability to iterate on it maybe is a little more efficient, and it's allowing NASCAR to hey, we're going to go to a test and we're going to tinker with stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that from your standpoint and the standardized car standpoint, right? Like you said, when the teams have to manufacture parts to try, normally from chassis to chassis, things aren't quite universal.
Right.
So now having a universal car, it definitely, in my opinion, is easier to try stuff like that. And to have 6 sets of everything that they're trying here for the 6 cars that are here, it definitely makes it easier.
Yep.
So I want to, first of all, you've been a great correspondent. We appreciate it, John Hunter. You got a future,
Thanks.
man, in the TV world. Hopefully in 20 some odd years, 25 years in the after many championships. You had a great season this past season. The Xfinity obviously kicked my butt a lot. But I want to know, for the fans that are listening to you out there, what are you looking at? Like, as a driver that's not driving the car, you're going to the Cup again for a second time now, and I think a really good situation with Legacy Motor Club and Toyota. But like, what are you and Ben Bayshore? What are you watching? What are you looking at? What are you observing out there that you could tell people like, yeah, this is what's on my mind. So I'm focused on that. Hey, when we come here in the spring or whatever, or when I get in this next gen car, these are the things I'm working on.
Yeah, so for me, it's integrating within a new team, right? Within Legacy Motor Club. Luckily for me, to have a voice that I'm familiar with as far as been my side, and is a huge ordeal. So I definitely am looking forward to working with Ben again. But for us, being in the Xfinity deal the last year, it definitely is a different mindset coming into the Cup Series. Way more data as far as live data through SMT, with steering trays, brake trace, actual mile per hour trace, RPM, compared compared to the Xfinity deal where it's all GPS based, right? So the Xfinity deal, you're more or less like, you can look at SMT, but you're more or less guessing on what the guy is doing rather than actually having the data right there in front of you. So for me, it's learning about how to read certain parts of the data in really areas that I need to focus on, and what guys do different here from driver to driver. Sadly, we don't have SMT here at this test, from what I've been told, but we have live data on the 43 with Eric driving. So just kind of seeing different points and looking at that with Ben. And then for me, I don't have a ton of experience in this car. I've done a few tests with 2311. I think I've run 2 races in it. I've done a couple wheel force tests and different things of that sort with Toyota in quite a bit of sim time. But within that, these cars are completely different than the Xfinity car, the old Cup car, the Truck Series, where I have experience and can kind of suggest certain things as far as adjustments and how the car is handling and the direction that we need to go. So with these cars, with making runs like yesterday, I think they did 4 or 5 30-lap runs in a row on different sets of tires, and kind of just seeing where that trends to, and then listening to Eric and what he's talking about, and looking at data and kind of correlating that. And then also with Ben, so for Ben not being in the Cup Series last year, but in it in 21 and 22 with Kyle at JGR, just kind of listening to him talk and for what exactly Eric is suggesting, what Ben would do to fix it, right? Like listening to what adjustments and what areas of the car that he would work on. So for us being out here, it's more about communication, more about me learning as much as I can about this car, and just trying to soak in as much knowledge as I can, as well as being out here for the different packages. I don't know if we're going to run the same package at short tracks or a different package that they're trying here. So it's learning about each one of those packages. So when it does come out that if we end up changing packages, I kind of know somewhat along the lines of what to expect and how to prep for that.
You've also, I got to let you go here soon, but we've got 2 more things for you. Just first and foremost, the new Camry you guys got out there.
Yep.
You know, I look at the Ford, the Camry. These manufacturers are getting aggressive with the look of these race cars, which is not just for looks, I would think, from what you're seeing. That has to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say too much on that forefront, but I definitely
I baited you.
You did. You tried, Parker. I know better than that. But being able to see the new Camry in action out here, with Seabell behind the wheel and Eric, and seeing just what Toyota has been able to produce and replicate from the new Camry that's coming out in 24 is huge. I'm proud of all the effort from Toyota and everyone behind the scenes that made it happen, and hopefully we can get a new Camry to Victory Lane here next year.
That'd be very nice. Very nice. You did it many times this past year, as I mentioned. We got one more thing before we let you go. As I said, you've been a great correspondent, but we ask every guest a question of the day on Money Lap Live. And our question today is, if you had the chance to drive one or the other one time, an F1 car at Monaco or an Indy car at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval?
F1 at Monaco. I feel like Monaco is such an iconic place to be able to go and run, and I thoroughly enjoyed the street race at Chicago last year. I thought that it was really cool, a lot of different characteristics, and to be honest, since I was a little kid, I've tuned in to Monaco every time that they've run there with F1. So, I mean, run an F1 car too. How can you beat that at this point?
100%. Great response. I'm sure that's going to be a popular one, man. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Best of luck out there the rest of the tests, and best of luck in 2024 with your new team in the Cup Series.
Thanks. You too, Parker. Appreciate you guys having me on, Landon.
Thanks for joining, John.
See ya.
That was great, man. Some good insight. I thought
that was really good.
He didn't hold back. It's, you know, it's kind, before we jump into our next thing, it's kind of like what we've been hearing though, a little bit for a better part of a year now. We're trying a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff being, going through, but nothing's the big hitter. Nothing's the thing. It's like, there's just a lot of discussion. We mentioned the cars, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube and if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see these two images, but these are the new Camry and the new Ford Mustang, Dark Horse, as they call it. The Mustang, the Dark Horse, sorry, has the most aggressive front end. What do you call it? What am I looking for here? Not louvers at the top. Fenders. Top of the fenders of a NASCAR stock car I think I've ever seen. They get to a point. They're like mountaintops. That's aero.
It's always interesting. I can't imagine being I can't imagine being NASCAR in these, going through these approval processes, because they involve the other manufacturers in these approvals, and they, wind tunnel test these designs and stuff, and to keep it fair, right? And I do not envy their position to have to make these approvals. Just one last note, about the aero stuff, because like you said, NASCAR's been testing stuff. It feels like they haven't found their solution, and they've tried some aggressive things. And so I want to, kind of make this point off of what I had mentioned a few minutes ago. And then I kind of want to make a counter argument to my own point. It just seems
this is when you argue
like
with yourself.
Right now,
here we go, folks.
I know this is like my signature. This is my signature move. I'll just argue with myself. It just seems to me right now that that aero is not going to solve the problem. Right? Like, and maybe there's no one smoking gun anyways, but like, we have just tried so many aero things. We have reduced downforce, allegedly reduced downforce. Remember that, because that's part of my rebuttal here. We've reduced downforce so much. We tried this lift splitter in Richmond, and it just, nobody has kind of, at least to the public, right? It doesn't seem like there's been this aha moment yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I wonder at what point we take what we have with the aero and those aggressive changes are now going to the mechanical direction, the tire, the horsepower, whatever it is. And it sounds like I know they've been trying tires, not just at this test, but before, last year they started trying different tires. They were trying different tires in races, right? We had a different tire in Martinsville. We had a different tire in Phoenix. So it just feels like we've exhausted a lot of aero. We've turned a lot of aero knobs and not gotten the result we're looking for. Now, where I'm going to argue with myself is I've driven these cars and can tell you that they will tell you how little downforce these cars have, but I can tell you they are aero sensitive. I've driven them.
Yep. I
know the feeling, right? And so, and they don't, they still drive like cars that have downforce. So as a driver, it's been weird to have engineers tell me how little downforce these cars have. And I'm like, hey, that's fine. You could show me, wind tunnel data all you want, but I've experienced, downforce, aero loss, and dirty air and traffic in these cars. So I think that in itself, that argument itself, is what is their justification, and is what makes you want to continue going down these aero path to find a solution that keeps the car balanced in traffic.
And to put a bow on this, you mentioned it. The third rail issue is, of course, horsepower. And at this point, I don't want to dive into this because we do have to move on. We have a patient waiting guest, but I just want to say there's a pretty simple solution there, and it's that if you don't want the world talking about it anymore, then just fix it. And it goes back to a couple things for me. When you're asked how fast you go in a NASCAR stock car, when you tell someone you're a NASCAR driver and they go, oh my gosh, how fast do you go? Do you ever go, at Martinsville we go about 120, at Bristol we do 135, this track 200. We do about 150, but we get to Talladega and Daytona, we do 200. Or what do you respond with? We go over
200.
200.
There's nothing cooler than when we could say our engines had 900 horsepower.
And to my point, a tier 1 top level series in the 2023, whether it's Formula 1, IndyCar, or NASCAR, should simply say,
Yep.
we've got 1,000.
I see Ryan nodding his head.
And
Let's
then
bring Ryan into this conversation.
Yeah, then the conversation is done, and you mentioned it. I want to bring him on. Last thing on that. Well, we get even owed to this TV show at one point. That was Top Gear, as they're shuttering it. But one of the most ingenious things they did that you will realize is in every podcast you like, in every show about automotive entertainment or motorsports, is pub facts. You want to be able to leave those shows with something that you could walk into a bar and tell someone and they go, wow, that's amazing. 1,000 horsepower is that pub fact. It's the thing the sport needs. Anyway, our next guest is a young man who has defied the odds in almost every direction. He went over to Europe to continue chasing his NASCAR dream, as many do. He's got more loyal followers on TikTok than the population of Reno, Nevada. That's over 500,000. He loves chicken nuggets, and he recently won the Comcast Community Award for simply being a great guy. We've got Ryan Vargas here on the Money Lap Live. Welcome to the show, Ryan. We appreciate you coming up here, buddy. I think they're playing the wrong. Oh, no, you are here. There we go.
There I am. Hi.
Congrats on the award and welcome.
Yeah,
we got
good.
you, man.
You guys
got
me?
You.
Okay, cool. No, I appreciate you guys having me. This is super neat. I'm a fan of what y'all do. Thank you for the really cool intro. It made me sound a lot cooler than I am. But no, it's just been a crazy last 365 days, and the next 365 is probably going to be even crazier. So it's been good.
Definitely. We appreciate you jumping on here, man. I saw you. I could see. For the viewers out there and the listeners, I can see the guest sort of before you guys come on. I have a really cool trick set up here. I could see you nodding in approval of our horsepower discussion. There. You were listening to some of what John Hunter had to say about this test. Before we jump into everything else, why were you nodding in approval? What was that?
Well, I mean, a perfect example of, and Landon, you know more about this because you've actually driven the race cars. You look at 2014, right? And it's kind of a meme at this point. You know, people online will share the infamous clip of Chicagoland at the 2014 fall race where they were ripping the fence and pulling sliders and going 3 wide on each other. And people are like, man, that was so great. And that was when the cars had a ton of horsepower, but you also got to think that's also when they had some of the biggest spoilers and splitters on them. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of downforce, a lot of drag, a lot of everything, but they had that horsepower. So that kind of almost, to me, answers that question of no matter the downforce that you put on it or downforce you take away, it still needs that power. Now, I think we kind of went in a good direction when you look at like 2016 to 2018. I think overall the racing was solid and it made it, in my opinion, at least it looked easier to follow. I don't know. I raced a cup car, so Landon probably attest because he drove that generation, and same with you, Parker. But I know from the Xfinity car, which still runs big motor, small blade, or big-ish motor, that you can kind of run up on guys easier and pass versus when I ran the K&N series, that still runs big blade and little motors too. So, yeah.
So that's a really good point, and I'll tell you a little story on that and my experience with them. So that big motor, it just allows you to recover, right? That's what you're talking about. And those are the examples that you're giving. It allows you to recover when you make a mistake and you lose a little bit of time. You can always go to the throttle and drive out of it, right? Or let's say it's not a mistake. Let's say you get aero tight or aero loose in traffic. You have the horsepower to recover from that and get back to where you were. And because let me tell you, we look back on those days like they were the glory days of intermediate racing. And maybe they were from this perspective, but we as drivers were complaining about aero, dirty air just as much back then as we are now. Right. Yeah. And so, I'm not trying to sugarcoat the past by any means. But that it does seem like that horsepower allows you to recover. And then one really interesting story from personal experience that was a huge eye opener for me. During that time period, I was testing in the sim. This was the early days of sim testing. And I was doing a test for Ganassi at the time. And we were doing what they called a sensitivity test. So we weren't working on any specific setups. We weren't working on any specific models. They were literally turning the big knobs, right? So I would make a run where they turn the horsepower up and they turn the horsepower down. They turn the downforce up, they turn the downforce. Things you couldn't do in real life, right? But they were trying to find like, hey, where should we find speed, right? Should we spend R&D on horsepower and go get 2 more horsepower, or should we spend R&D money on downforce or drag, or CG? So they raised and lowered the weight distribution of the car, the center of gravity. Nice little clip there at me, Chicago spinning Justin Allgaier out. I remember that moment.
Clean him out.
I was very angry with Allgaier at the moment. At that. I did that absolutely intentionally. I might have even said something on the radio. In modern day NASCAR, I could have gotten suspended for that. So as focusing on this topic, because this is a really good story. So we were doing the sensitivity test, and we were doing the test at Chicago. So I'm glad you're playing clips from Chicago. In the simulator, in the driver and loop simulators and the manufacturer sims, there's no tire fall off, there's no weather variation, so you can run theoretically you can run the same lap over and over and over and over again. Okay, so when we reduced horsepower by some degree, not a ton, but some degree, when we reduced horsepower, I could run so consistently, like I'm talking, and I was, in the zone. I had been in the sim all day, like in a really great spot. I could run almost identical lap times, 10, 12 laps in a row. 30, let's say that at Chicago at the time, maybe I was running 30.3 second laps. I could run a 30.30 or a 30.31, 10 laps in a row, like that accurately when they reduced horsepower. When they increased horsepower, my variation and my consistency, I could not be that accurate, right? My potential to go faster was better, so I might run a 30.19, but I still might run a 30.30 every second or third lap. My consistency was way tougher. I couldn't just turn up the horsepower and then run 30.19s as accurately as I ran 30.30s. So that was an eye-opener for me. That was like, hey, more horsepower is more variation in lap time, more driver variation. It was harder for me to be accurate. It was harder for me to be consistent. And those are the things that to drivers, we have a hard time articulating this, but those are the things that translate to good racing. Right? Those are the things that translate to passing, and it's why we love dirt sprint car racing and jumping the cushion and then driving out of it. I'll let our guest talk because I'm just sitting here going,
yeah, you're really going on here. Hey, Ryan, you have an opinion on all the things he just said over the last 55 minutes?
I'll finish off with this, and I think this is something that like I kind of noticed, especially in the last 2 years that we moved to the next gen platform, is you look at the road racing. I'd even look at like from 2018, because I would say that was the start of the change when they first made the move to the Charlotte Roval and started making that emphasis on road racing, especially in 2020 and 2021 when they did the Daytona road course, added COTA, now we have the Chicago street race. The reason why I think a lot of fans fell in love with the road racing at the time was because it was the cars that we grew up with, the stock cars of then, that were made to go on ovals. That's what those cars were really designed to do. They're designed to run ovals. They are oval platform race cars, and you make them road race, they're not going to really race as good. And so it makes it harder to drive, and it makes the drivers have to get up on the wheel and try different things. Now with the next gen platform, it seems it favors more towards that GT style or GT a platform of race car. Again, this is from the outsider's perspective, and from people who I've talked to. So, taking it with a grain of salt, but it just seems that now that the car drives better on road courses, like it handles better. I remember when they first did the first test for the next gen, they were like, oh my gosh, the next gen's a second and a half faster on the Roval than it was with the Gen 6. And my first thought to that was like, oh no, this is really struggle. Like, it's cool that it's faster. Yeah, but it's cool that it's faster, but that means it's driving better. And that's not what we need on road courses.
Hey, Ryan, so I want to take the conversation in a little different direction and appreciate you chiming in there with all those opinions. Opinions are always welcome, by the way, here on the Muddy Lab Live. Always welcome. We accept them, and everyone has one, and you're allowed to have it here. We won't discriminate against that. You won the Wendell Scott Trailblazer Award in 2016, 2017, but as I mentioned in your intro, this at the NASCAR Awards banquet, you won the Comcast Community Award. And I believe we actually have the video explaining what you won it for and what you were doing to get that award. So I think we actually want to play it here and let all our viewers watch it. Let the podcast listeners listen to it. It's a great video, a touching story. We'll learn more about you, and then we can talk about it on the other side. I think they got it teed up.
That sounds good. Let's do it.
Awesome.
I have this really cool scar on the side of my head that I look at every morning, and I tell myself that I'm here for a reason. Craniosynostosis is a skull deformation that affects 1 in every 2,000 to 3,000 kids, myself being one of them, when your soft spot closes and causes the sutures in your skull to actually fuse together.
If you don't have surgery to have that opened, the brain cannot grow. So he had
Can
to
you
have
confirm you're on
surgery
the
at
correct
11 months old.
Correct.
He was in the hospital in the NICU for about 6 days.
We
Very
think.
fortunate because he only had to have 1 surgery.
We think you're on.
Many kids who are faced
If
with
you
this
hit
have to
the,
have
yeah, I think
multiple
you hit the
surgeries.
gear
They're
icon. You can
very
choose which
vulnerable.
microphone you're on.
So he was extremely
It may
The
it could.
bullying, the harassment that some of these
Okay,
people
it's
get
probably
is
the settings on the mic.
unbelievable.
Um,
I've been able to meet so many fantastic individuals.
Yeah,
with my
he's on-
partnership with Faces.
I think it's just the settings.
Facial Association. They help raise awareness for the many different types and forms of craniofacial differences. I hope that me having the place I have in the sport and being able to bring faces into the forefront is what I want to do.
Brian and I met through LinkedIn when he reached out, 4 or 5 years ago, wanting to help faces.
I wanted to learn more about myself. I wanted to learn more about other people who may have been through the same thing I have. And I just kind of made a promise to them. I was like, look, I want to help you guys. I want to grow this because I do have this place in the sport where I can bring faces to people.
Our mission is to help children and adults with craniofacial differences to provide financial aid for travel. Many times these families have to travel to the other side of the country to get to the medical professional that they need.
If kids and adults can get to these surgeries, it will make them more normal, or they can live more of a fulfilled life.
Being a board member and helping out on the media side and promotion side, I've been able to put faces on race cars. They were on my TikTok car, they were on my Reddit car, they were featured prominently on some of my starts back in 2020 and just as recently as this year.
Hey kids, this is Ryan Vargas. I'm a NASCAR driver. I was born with craniosynostosis. To tell you guys about a really cool summer camp happening this July called Faces Camp.
Faces Camp really started based on that idea that if you have extra medical needs, you can go to this regular camp and you can experience independence while experiencing a normal, everyday experience for any kid their age. A lot of craniofacial kids and campers, they don't get to have that independence, whether it's their parents are always with them or medical professionals. This really lets them grow as individuals, learn new things, and create friendships. I think a lot of the campers saw him as, I can be like him. I think a couple of the girls had a little crush on him. That was Ryan, as a camp counselor.
They're a small group who are putting every bit of their effort, every bit of their resources into helping kids. I remember we were going over the financial side of things and we were talking about how they weren't meeting the mark to help make Faces Camp happen. It just bummed me out because these kids, they just had such a good time. They're gonna put this directly into helping those kids to put on another fantastic Faces Camp to help with the grants, to organize more events, and that's the most important thing to me.
The positivity that came from Ryan is hope. I think a lot of people don't have hope when it comes to having a craniofacial condition.
There's stories that I've heard of people who questioned if they'd make it to adulthood. And that, to me, matters a whole lot more than my story. If I can at least help these kids, find that hope or get, excited about, what's coming, what's next, they can live a normal life, that's a win. And so I try and do that anytime I have the opportunity. I don't want to raise awareness for me, I want to raise awareness for them.
My man.
Yeah.
Great
That
work.
was cool. I even have
That's awesome.
I got a little surprise for the viewers too. Here's the actual trophy. It's
very
heavy.
cool. Wow.
It's heavy. This
my
thing,
gosh.
I think it's
That's
like
nice.
35, 40 pounds. It's like look, they even have a little autograph. I feel scared holding this.
That is a nice trophy.
Yeah, it is.
What
a
what
nice
an amazing recognition, and
thank you.
That's pretty cool.
That's
Ryan.
almost, Landon. That is almost as good as your trophy from your winning the bus race at Charlotte.
Yes.
Yes.
Almost as nice in quality. Yeah. So.
No,
yeah.
But it was.
That had to be a really cool feeling, though. Yeah.
No, it was really cool. It was really cool. I mean, the best part about this is that it has nothing to do with race cars on track. It has everything to do with what Faces, the National Craniofacial Association, does for the families, does for, to raise awareness, and also does for all the kids who attend their summer camp or any of their other big events throughout the year. So, like I said, I think that's the coolest part about it. It impacts lives and more so than not.
And you were there because you are a race car driver. I think we should talk some racing as well. You got to do something that neither Landon nor I have done, and that is race in the NASCAR Euro Series this past year. You and I talked about it a little bit, I believe, at Martinsville's last time we were chatting. But for the viewers out there who don't know, first of all, explain the series, what it is, what that was, like. When people think of NASCAR, they think of America, right? But NASCAR has expanded to the NASCAR Euro Series. There's a Brazil Series now. There's the NASCAR Mexico Series. So what was this experience like for you going over there?
Yeah, so the experience really going over there was, I'm going to tell you this too. The NASCAR fans out in Europe are just as crazy and excited as NASCAR fans here are. I went over to the fan zone after the Saturday race in Germany, where we finished 10th, got off track and out, autograph session thing. So I go to the fan zone. There's dudes wearing Kyle Busch jackets. There's dudes wearing Budweiser 8 jackets. There's country music playing. This one guy was frying corn dogs, and there was like Diecast retailers. Like it felt like I was at a NASCAR race, which was really, really cool. And I think the best part about it is it's pure stock car racing, just kind of like at a very, it is a grassroots, series, I would say. It's, but at the same time, it is NASCAR. It's, it's bringing NASCAR stock car racing to overseas, taking them. I mean, you saw the 2 races I did, Osterschlieben in Germany, and then Zolder in Belgium, a very historic racetrack. And it was really fun. They run 2 divisions. They run Euro NASCAR Pro, which is the class I ran in, and they also have Euro NASCAR 2, but I believe there's some name changes happening. But there's some, it's just, it was really fun. So to give a little bit of the specs on these cars, apparently they're very similar to the Pinty's cars. I've not seen the Pinty's cars up close. So again, grain of salt. But, they're a bit, they have a bit less power. They have about 450 horsepower to the rear tires. Spec parts all the way around. Everybody runs the same equipment. Everybody has the same engine, same suspension pieces, same everything. Really, the biggest difference is who puts them together, who sets them up, and then who's driving them. And it was impressive to me to see the quality of teams. It was impressive to me to see obviously the turnout was incredible. Apparently, Brands Hatch this year had like 55,000 people show up.
Wow.
It's a big deal over there. And then also like the hospitality was great. Every team had like, when you go to IMSA race, they have like the tents, like that kind of go over like their hospitality stuff. It's just like that. Like it was honestly, it felt much bigger, being there. And so hats off to, Jerome and his team, who run the NASCAR Whelen Euro Series. Cause it's a really well put together series. I was at the banquet, cheering its praises, just because I feel like it's kind of like NASCAR's hidden underrated gem, just because of the fact they go to these, they go to some incredible racetrack. I mentioned Brands Hatch, Zolder, they're bringing an oval back with the Netherlands next year. I mean, they're bringing NASCAR racing to some really historic and unique racetracks that people don't expect NASCAR racing to be. And I think that's really, really cool, as a race fan and as a driver.
When I ran, when I went to when I went to Goodwood, and drove at the Festival of Speed there, I mean, they loved our cars. They loved seeing the big loud V8s. I mean, it was like kind of part nostalgic and rare for them to see. And I could imagine watching, stock car racing at its best is a pretty cool thing. Is the racing on TV over there, or is it just bring a huge crowd to the races?
Yeah, so all the racing is streamed on YouTube, and it's pretty cool. Like it's like because of that, it's free for everybody to see. Obviously, because it's in Europe, their races are pretty early in the morning. They roll off sometime around 7 to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're on the West Coast, sorry, got to get up a lot earlier. But it's one thing I'll say too. Like I did mention, they don't have as much power and stuff like that. A lot of spec parts, but because of that, behind the wheel, you actually have to make up a little bit of that difference. Kind of like we were talking about earlier, you have to drive the snot out of them. And it I found myself pushing the car beyond its limits for the first time, because you look at, this is a good video to show too, because they kind of show some of the highlights, but I mean, the way these cars are, you can really get into each other, really race hard, and it is FIA sanctioned. So sorry, Parker, there are track limits somewhere, and also somewhere, some places now, if
that's not my NASCAR.
Are we going to have a track limits discussion here, or
you could track
out?
No. You can track out on exits.
No,
but if you look at, we're going to get to the chicane right here. You're going to see it right here. They just don't want more than 4 tires below that curb on the left. That's like,
okay.
It's kind of like the NASCAR track.
You don't want to cut it. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want you cutting.
You guys are still able to put tires in the grass a little bit and that sort of thing. That's good track limits. We're good with that.
Yeah, it was kind of like exactly. But it's and the thing is too, like I mentioned, you're pushing the car very hard. You're having to be aggressive with the passes, aggressive with the moves. I found myself, like I said, pushing the car beyond its limits. In some occasions, I made one mistake. I think this is from race 1. I was holding on to 8th for a minute, and then coming out of one of the sweeper corners, I got off into the dirt with my left sides, and I was like, man, and because you're doing that, and because, like I mentioned, a little bit of the power difference, I got just high-sided by like 2 cars, and I was like, dang it, and I had to settle in 10th. But it's really impressive. A lot of these guys have some incredible racing backgrounds. I know my teammate, my satellite teammate, I guess you could say, at Team Kligerman Race Planet.
I'm sorry, say that name one more time.
Team Kligerman.
Say the team.
Team Kligerman. Yeah. Race Planet.
Race Planet. Okay, yeah, I like that name. Race Planet. I drive for Food
so they have like
USA in the Truck Series. You drive for the Planet of racing.
I drive for the Race Planet. So you may have a country of food. I have a planet of racing.
Yeah. That's bigger.
Gorelli is his name. He ran Formula 2 and was very successful. The only reason why he wasn't there is just because, obviously, as any racing series, it's expensive. He ran Indy Lights. He's come from a very successful GT racing career. Giorgio Maggi, another driver. He won the 24 Hours of Zolder. There's FIA champions that race in the Euro Series. Just because they love it. And it's like it's kind of funny to me because we did Zolder. We had some folks out from other GT teams out from Germany, because we welcomed them to the track, and they were looking at the cockpit of the car, and there are 3 switches total, and the tack, and like obviously water temp and all that stuff. And they said, "That's it." And I was like, "Yeah, that's it." But it's an H pattern gearbox. Look at me, I'm saying gearbox now. H pattern 4-speed. It's just pure stock car racing, and it's really cool.
So, what do you think about for next year? Do you know yet? What's the plan? Try to get back over there, and keep doing. What's on your mind?
I have a couple, different, opportunities, right? I mean, I've had to. The reason why I did a lot of the things I did this year was because I just wanted to have a bit of a change of pace. I wanted to make sure that, anything I did, I could really focus on the activation on the sponsorship side, like with these guys, Critical Path. I've traveled now all over the country, with them. I obviously now they were on my Euro Series car, traveled the globe, representing them. And it's been an absolute blast to kind of work with them and grow those partnerships. And same thing with all the other sponsors I've been fortunate to work with. And, taking and I'm sure you guys can maybe attest to this a little bit, but sometimes you got to take a bit of a step back in some ways to make a couple steps forward. And I definitely had to do that last year. I have a note on my desk in my room, and it says "screw it." It doesn't say "screw." Drive everything, have fun. And that's what I set out to do this year. I set out to drive everything and have fun, and I accomplished everything that I wanted to do. The only thing I, selfishly would say is that I wish I could have done a few more races, but at the end of the day, as a race car driver, you always want to do more. But got a top 10 in the truck series. Never ran trucks until this year, I should say. Had plenty of really good speed in races where I had a lot of speed in the truck. Getting used to a vehicle that I'm not at all accustomed to, because I ran the Xfinity car for 3 or 4 years. Traveled overseas. So basically the fun having experience continues to next year. There's a lot of really cool things that I'm working on, whether it be overseas, whether it be here in the States. We're very close to getting the ink on paper and having it dry. I feel really good about some of the things that we're doing. But like I said, that the goal remains the same: have fun and drive everything. So if you see me driving a Euro car or an Xfinity car or a monster truck or a boat, I'm having fun.
I'm a big manifest
does
guy,
everything,
and so I'm gonna. Well, hold on. I'm gonna say I wholeheartedly agree with writing something down, manifesting it. What do you want to say, Landon? What were you gonna ask?
Does driving everything include pixel cars?
Yes.
iRacing
yes.
too.
Tell us what do you have going on there? I think you got a big show tonight, or is it tonight?
It's tomorrow. Yeah, so I'm Core is obviously a big league that I do. Monday Night Racing, I run that league. And these guys are represented in there too, Critical Path. It's been a lot of fun. I've been able to do a lot on there. I've started to enter sweaty status of just, running as much as I do, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to do that. It's a good way to kind of decompress while also, still getting that racing bug. Been able to work with, as you see the background, kind of the Charlotte Phoenix. That's the team I'm on, on the esports side and the NASCAR side. And there's some other things that I'm working on with iRacing. I will also say for the sim racers that are potentially watching this, we are very close to making eTruck Night 3 happen. So Parker and Landon, your invites are extended.
Hey,
very cool.
eTruck Night round 3 is, I would say it's almost a surefire go for being in the near future. So it'll be fun. We'll have a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. I do want to ask one more question about it, and then I'll let Parker ask you the question of the day. Just to touch one more bit on iRacing and esports. What do you think about the oval update that's coming? Have you driven it, or is there any?
So the specifics of it, it's mainly to try and help with the multi-groove, right? Is that what it is? Just to kind of refresh me a little bit.
I think so.
Yeah, I think they're kind of bringing back the dynamic track.
So
if you're not I don't know what all is. Parker probably might know more about it right now. But I
basically back in 2017. Well, in 2017, we had that amazing dynamic track that potentially was a little thought to be
too dramatic,
not very realistic, too dramatic. But it was epic. You go to a racetrack and the rubber lay down, and you have to move grooves at Bristol and Dover, and it was awesome. All the mile and a halves. And then that went away over the last couple of years. They had dynamic track, but it just didn't work. And it sounds like in the latest oval update, there's an attempt to try and sort of, when you talk about sensitivity you were talking about earlier in the sim, like turn that up or just make it happen better or more realistically. So we'll see. Anyway, not to totally derail this conversation here.
Yeah.
We look forward to your event.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But no, I'm a big fan of that. I mean, nothing makes me more mad than loading up a race at Homestead and having to run the bottom.
Awful.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough, man. It's rough. But iRacing's done really well with trying to fix some things. I know they added some ways to kind of have like an aero cushion, I guess, at some of the ovals. I don't know. I've tried it. I never feel it. It really just felt like for NR people, felt like NR grip lanes. That's kind of what it felt like. Running the
Don't
wall.
worry.
Like
the manufacturer sims have attempted to do it as well, and it feels pretty much the same way. So at times, it's an odd sensation to make happen. That one, a really odd sensation.
I got up there. I got up there a couple times, and it's like, okay, it has grip, it doesn't feel like I'm getting sideways and all of a sudden it's catching it. It just kind of feels like I'm just turning in and it's like, oh, okay, it's just there's more grip here.
Yep.
You know,
The
like
wall
you look
cushion.
at Atlanta. Yeah, exactly. It's like you go to old Atlanta. Like I ran a Gen 4 race there this week, and it was like, oh, okay, you can just run. Like if it just felt like if you moved up for every lane you moved up, it gained a certain percent of grip. Like, oh, this lane is 2 or 3% more grippy. This lane is 6 or 7% more grippy. Like it just kind of felt like that. It wasn't like anything different.
So,
but
I'm
a big fan.
We got to. If it goes the way it was in 2017, we're all better for it because it was so much fun. We do have to let you go, but before we let you go, we have a question of the day, as Landon alluded to. You're gonna love this one. It fits right in your mantra. So, if you had the choice and had to choose one, would you drive an F1 car at Monaco or an Indy car at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval?
So, you know, the race car driver in me, right? So I'm gonna the race car driver in me is like, man, go to Monaco. Like, oh my god, that sounds incredible, right? But the race fan in me, like the guy who up until he was 11 years old was watching on the sidelines, and still to this day does the same thing. I would almost say Indy, just because I've dreamed of racing on the oval, whether it be a stock car or any type of car. I've yet to actually drive on the track in any fashion. And so to me, to have the experience of going 200 miles an hour into a corner, whatever, well, an Indy car, 220 or 230, that just sounds absolutely nuts. So as much as I would love to do Monaco, and even then, I feel like I'd be better at Monaco, but I think in the Indy car at Indianapolis would be it'd be like a life fulfillment type thing.
Great answer. Great answer. I was thinking for a second that we're
all the way through.
I was afraid that we would need to handicap this question for the rest of our guests because, you know, if it was going to be too easy of a Monaco for everybody, I was trying to think of ways to handicap the question, but that was a really, really good and well thought out answer. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you actually did realize what we were trying to do with that question, which is one, obviously driving an F1 car at Monaco would be cool, but you can't really push the car. You'd be in the barrier. You know, it's going to be really tough to really get the fullness out of the car. Meanwhile, the fastest car or the fastest you'll ever go in a closed circuit on a race car is Indianapolis Motor Speedway in qualifying configuration IndyCar. So, you know, you mentioned 230. They're doing 245 or 243 into turn 3 last year, depending on where the wind is. 240 into turn 1. Like, that is getting it. So, do you want to go fast?
You made a good point there, and I know that you and I will have our chance to share our answer in this later. So I will. I have a unique answer to this that we'll save for the end of the show.
Perfect.
If I remember,
Ryan,
I'll write it down.
Appreciate you coming on, buddy. Congratulations.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing what you're racing in next year, man.
That sounds good. I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good show. Thank you.
Thanks Ryan.
We have some big stuff that's happening on the internet currently right now, Landon. So we're supposed to dive into a lot of this, but got completely derailed earlier on in the show, as you and I do. We end up going in deep dives and random stuff,
which is fine because we've let it we've let it play out.
We've let this play out. So we did. I just want to remind the live viewers, those listening in the podcast form, we do have Brodie Kostecki, the Supercar champion, coming up here soon. And then obviously Adam Stern, who will dive into the NASCAR TV deal with this drama that's currently happening on the internet, which is this Formula One drama involving the Wolffs. So that's Toto Wolff and Susie Wolff. They are married. Toto Wolff, obviously the team principal of Mercedes F1 AMG. Susie is now the head of the F1 Academy, which is the all-women's racing series that kind of replaced the W series from a couple years ago. Seems to be growing really well. Well, because of that, the F1 Academy is basically an FOM project. And so in one of the most, and what I love about F1, I just need to preface this for a second. This has gone on for many decades, in that Formula One loves a bit of political drama. They love a boardroom, drag out, a courtroom drama, a courtroom fight, a brawl that's going to occur with pens and paper and lawyers. and all sorts of people walking out into seas of people outside a courtroom and then saying some, sort of,
corporate jargon
statement, corporate jargon. So they love this sort of thing. That's what we have here. And one of the most, I just think this is is one of the most wild witch hunts I've ever seen. There was alleged that Toto Wolff said something in a press conference that he only could have known from someone within FOM. And because of that, there is an allegation that some teams went to the FIA in saying that this is because of his, obviously being married to Susie and her being privy to things and knowledge that she then told him that he knew, which gave Mercedes an advantage over their competition because he knew these things. Now, there was a statement put out by Mercedes. There was a statement put out by Susie. And then, as we've been doing this show, there have been almost a word-for-word verbatim statement put out by almost every F1 team saying they weren't the ones who reported on this. This has got to be one of the most wild political scenarios I've seen in Formula One probably since the McLaren-Ferrari engineering deal that resulted in a $100 million penalty for McLaren. This is up there.
So what exactly do we know? What Toto actually said that triggered this yet, or is it a broad? Because they came out and just broadly said investigation over potential sharing of information, right?
Yep.
And so you're tying it back to something he might have said at a press conference. Do we know what he said that they're tying this to?
I don't have that information. I read this in an article this morning. So you can check, some of that was in the Money Lap newsletter this morning. Go subscribe to moneylap.com. But I read that report basically that's where this is coming from. The thing to me that really doesn't make a lot of sense is that this is the type of thing that you would hear between, confidential stuff that someone in the government may learn and then tell their spouse, right? And they actually can't even, a spouse in the United States, a spouse can't even go up on the stand in courtroom against them because they are privy to that information. That's just normal. It's understood. Right. So to me, that first and foremost, just the way this is being purported is odd. Secondly, what's odd to me is that you're talking about competition and commercial rights. So FIA is competition, FOM is commercial rights and commercial things within Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
Why would what could you know commercially that is even helping you competition wise? I just, the gap to me is large here. I feel like I'm trying to cross the Grand Canyon in my mind as to connect these two, and I really am struggling to do that. So if you're watching this right now live and you have a comment, please let us know in the comments there. If you're listening on the podcast, send us your comments on this on Twitter or anywhere else, or leave comments on YouTube. But that's where I'm struggling. And so I think this is just a really weird political witch hunt, in my opinion. And the last thing I'll say is that if you think about it, we're in December. Formula One has quieted down. They've fallen out of the media news cycle. And then what bubbles up? Political drama. Bernie Ecclestone used to be the absolute king of this. And he would find a way to say he'd say it's some incendiary remark December 15th or December 18th. And then he would say it again in January 12th and then February 15th. And then the season started in March and you never heard from him again for 9 months.
It's showbiz, baby.
Let's go. Unbelievable.
So Susie Wolff's statement was pretty aggressive, defending herself, which is, I would defend myself aggressively in the same position if I felt strongly about the investigation. But she's, saying that she's deeply insulted is disheartening, that her integrity is being called in question. That's, you would expect her to say that. But she's pretty much, going to saying that this seems to be rooted in intimidatory and misogynistic behavior. that is focused on her marital status rather than her abilities. That's going back to what you originally said, calling it a witch hunt, which then, I'm reading where people are taking her statements and then tying it back to, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher the CEO of F1's name. But they're allegations of statements that he's made, misogynistic
Mohammed Ben Salem
patterns,
the FIA president, or
yes,
okay, the FIA, Mohammed Ben Salem.
So
he's the FIA president.
The FIA president. They're tying it back to the FIA president's past history of misogynistic allegations, statements. So, kind of interesting. Like her, automatic response here, is using at part of it saying this is a witch hunt, and it's just because of her marital status, and I don't know. It's
well, one thing I want to bring up to you guys is the fact that 3 days ago, Total Wolf started throwing just balls over at Michael Massey, the former FAA race director, calling him an idiot and several other things. And some people are tying that back to all of this and saying this is almost a retaliatory strike, saying, okay, if you're going to go after our people still, Toto, we're going to have to make you learn. And I mean, if Formula One is great at one thing, it's certainly doing politics and stuff like that. So it just feels like this was kind of loaded up in the gun, waiting for Toto to do something wrong. And that's what some people are saying here.
Doing politics. That's a great quote there, Josh. I love that. I love that description.
It'll be interesting to follow. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about it next week.
Well, the last bit on it that's interesting to me is the teams all putting out essentially the same statement. They came together here. And I haven't read it actually because it's come out now while we've been on this show. We've been on live for almost 2 hours. So if we've got it, do you have it, Landon? We should read it. I mean, because they're all basically the same.
So this is a statement from Ferrari, which says, we can confirm that we have not made any complaint to the FIA regarding the allegation of information of a confidential nature being passed between an F1 team principal and a member of FOM staff. We are pleased and proud to support F1 Academy and its managing director, that would be Susie, through our commitment to sponsor an entrant in our liveries from next season. McLaren, we can confirm that McLaren Racing has not made any complaint to the FIA regards to the information confidential nature. So it's the same words here. You have, I think Red Bull also has come out with a statement, Williams Racing. So Haas has come out with a statement. So they're obviously the teams are fairly well aligned, and it's literally the same statement, which I think is a point that they're making, that the teams are aligned in this. And quick analysis on that. It seems that's big news to see the teams all aligned and rallying sort of around Mercedes and the Wolves. And that is a big deal to see that. But it doesn't surprise me, because I think that the teams, none of those teams want to see the FIA, even though they have the ability to just on a whim decide they want to investigate a team. Like, what does this investigation really look like? It could be incredibly intrusive. And who knows what, how expensive and what the legal process could look like, and the subpoenas and or what kind of information they can pull from these teams. So I would say that the teams are all probably fairly well aligned, even though these allegations could seem to, if they were true, might show that Mercedes was doing something to gain an unfair advantage, and who knows what that could be. But for now, until proven guilty, I think the teams should be very well aligned, to protect themselves from any future investigations like this, or just, baseless allegations, I guess.
There is one other thing happening here. If you noticed, the F1 teams were in full support of FOM. And there has been I guess, growing sentiment amongst the F1 paddock, and with what you're seeing in the growth financially and what FOM, which is owned by Liberty Media, has done in the last 5 or 8 years, in that there's a bit of contention between the teams and the FOM versus the FIA. And look no further than what Josh just mentioned with Massey and how Toto Wolff felt like that was not a fair result at the end of the 2021 Abu Dhabi finale, and took, Lewis's 8th championship. And that was, obviously he was then removed. And then bring in all the drama with the Andretti Cadillac team bid. Who supported their team bid and has supported their team bid and created a whole process, quote unquote, to then just ultimately select Andretti? The FIA. Who has the ability to have some control there to make that, let that happen? The FIA. Who has been vehemently opposed to this team and outwardly in the open about it? The FOM, F1, and the teams. This is the political side to this gets even deeper, because I just think you are seeing a sanctioning body versus the media rights holders in public going at each other. And there is some discussion, people had gone crazy enough to say, could F1 be gone with the FIA? Or is the FIA so entrenched in, the certifying of tracks and the safety and the sanctioning and obviously the technical side that you couldn't do that? So this is, I think there's a lot at play here. And I believe Toto and Susie are on, the bait per se, in some respects, to start to unravel this continued divide between these two. You know what it's similar to? And I don't know other sports ball stuff, but I think I've heard a lot about this. The NCAA and what's going on in college football, right? You were talking to me about this, where there's like people feel the process isn't correct, and you have essentially would be the sanctioning body isn't making the right decisions, and it's sort of and there's a bit of contention from the teams, and why even have this deal?
Well, right now, in college football, you have this committee that makes decisions on who gets in to the college football playoff. And right now, the college football playoff is only 4 teams. And now they are expanding the playoff, I think, starting next year. But yeah, it was pretty contentious this year because Florida State was an undefeated team that basically dropped out of the top 4 because their starting quarterback got hurt in one of the final games of the regular season. So, they basically replaced an undefeated team and the champion of their division or conference, I guess, with a team that has a loss and wasn't a champion of their conference. Actually, no, they didn't replace a champion. They kept Georgia in even with the loss. But regardless, they did replace Florida State, an undefeated team, with a team that had a loss. So there's a lot of politics involved in that. And then there always is, as a Ohio State fan, Ohio State's gotten in several times with a loss over some teams. And, people will always want to say, it's like, is it because they're a better team, or is it because Ohio State fans travel more to these games? They've got a bigger fan base than, Baylor or something like that, or a different, smaller market, or Clemson. But definitely politics everywhere, I guess.
Well, yeah. And so I don't know, I guess it wasn't a great analogy or connection, but anyway, it made me think of it. We actually have another voice here on the Money Lab that we debuted last week, and he is the head of partnerships and the head of the newsletter, which you can catch all of this as it unravels on the Money Lab newsletter in your inbox 3 times a week. But that is Kyle Dagger, who's going to come on here and ask us some questions. You had a newsletter go out this morning. He comes up with some great questions for us to go through after these newsletters. Kyle, you have the floor. Make these great, because we're talking some big topics here, big brain stuff.
We had a lot to cover today. I guess the first thing we'll dive into is Sergio Perez opened up in a recent interview about just what it was like getting completely dominated by his teammate all year. And I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Did he do enough to keep a seat next year?
Yes.
I don't,
because he won.
I don't know. I don't know, because Parker has screwed with my head on the purpose of a number 2 driver at F1. Right? And the
yes,
the headline, I'm looking at the Money Lab newsletter right now because the headline stood out to me. I cannot be this bad. Something's going on. Was that an actual quote from Sergio Perez?
It was. It's pretty funny.
From this. Yeah. So, I mean, he must expect, well, as any race car driver would, regardless of being a number 1 or number 2 driver, you're going to expect the most out of yourself. And so when your teammate's winning, you would maybe, when your teammate wins 19, or your team car is capable of winning 20 races in a season, you would hope to at least capture 5 or 6 of those and not just one. But yeah, Parker has messed with my head when it comes to team orders in F1. And I want to say, I don't know what the agenda is at Red Bull. Like, do they want 2 good drivers that are capable of winning? If they're going to win 20 out of 22 races, do they want their 10? Do they want that to be split 10-10 and have their teammates battle it out for the championship, or do they want a scenario where the car is tailored for their top driver and he's just going to have a built-in 3 or 4 times advantage over their teammate, let alone the rest of the field? I don't know, because if that's the case, case, maybe Sergio was a great teammate, right? Maybe he was a great supporting act to Max. And he did win a race. Like, I think that he did have where I would say that Sergio is probably going to be on the hot seat of this. Is like, he had a stretch of races where he was struggling to finish without some kind of issue. Right now, I do. They had a lot of grid penalties. It seemed like, I think, did they have some mechanical issues on his car this year? It just seemed like he was always having grid penalties, or
1 or 2.
I think he was in some incidents, so there's probably some stuff that he could have controlled to do a better job, and run second more consistently. But out of sheer performance, comparing him to Max, I'm not a good judge of that, because I don't think Parker's got me convinced here that his role isn't to be as fast as Max. So I think I'm going to judge more just on his execution.
I think personally, and as you allude to, there are teammates that fit an almost perfect percentage slower in Formula One, and a perfect percentage slower in that they will not out-qualify unless the other one has a problem, and they'll be there they're just close enough to pick up the slack when the main one has an issue. That is the teammate you want in Formula One, and to put more weight behind that point. When Christian Horner was asked about some of these allegations about Lewis Hamilton potentially talking to Red Bull, he basically alluded to that Sergio Perez is the best teammate for Max Verstappen because it's a perfect working relationship. And I'm like, that is basically just completely supporting the idea that you want a number 1, you got the number 2, and they need to be a percentage behind them. And if you do that right, you can have seasons like Red Bull had this year.
So I'll make a quick note on that. I think the more that I watch Max Verstappen and get to know his personality and see, his style, I know that we've talked about this number 1, number 2 thing as a model thing, but this could very well be a Max Verstappen thing too, because I don't know if he would be a very friendly teammate if things got competitive. And it could probably disrupt his ability to actually be the best that he can be, right? And we've seen that in NASCAR. Won't mention anybody specifically, but there's absolutely drivers in NASCAR that their personalities are better suited for a scenario where they are always the number 1 driver, and have a supporting cast teammate. And there's drivers in NASCAR that do well when their teammate succeeds and they can feed off of that. But there are drivers in NASCAR that are the alpha dog number one. And if they have a teammate that supersedes that, they actually melt down, right? And they can bring the whole organization down with them.
Kyle,
speaking
do you have another one
alpha
more.
Dog, yeah. Really quick, staying on topic with Max Verstappen, he's already identified key areas that he wants to improve for next year's car. Are we going to see a repeat of that domination this year?
Landon, you can always go faster.
Yeah.
You can always go faster.
There's only one way to not go faster in racing, and that is if you're stagnant, you're probably moving backwards.
Stop trying.
So,
and that's one of the hardest things. I mean, that's one of the hardest things in this sport, in any sport, I think, in any business, right? You have a good month, so you take a week off, right? You cool it for a little bit.
Yep.
You have a good year, your team has a good year, you think you're on top, you don't know where to improve, right? And in racing, it's we see, teams you can only dominate for so long until either A, you get lazy and you stop getting better, or B, your competition gets tired of getting their butt kicked.
I think you can always improve. Kyle, appreciate it, buddy. Check out the Money Lap at themoneylap.com. Hey, we got the fireworks back. Look at that.
I figured out hey, by the way, Kyle, you do an incredible job with the newsletter Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Be sure to subscribe, everybody that's listening, themoneylap.com. Get all your updates in 5 minutes or less. Kyle, we love you. Thank you so much for the newsletter. Come on. There it is. There it is.
Thank you.
I'm figuring out how the gestures work on my MacBook.
Oh my God. There we go. We've been alluding to it. We got more guests on here. That was a fun discussion. But our next guest, Landon, he went to high school in North Carolina. He raced in what's now called the ARCA Series, and he was on the path to NASCAR before he took a slight turn to Australia, where he most recently defeated the king of the land down under and everyone's favorite acronym race car driver, SVG, also known as Shane Van Gisbergen. It's the 2023 Supercars champion, Brodie Kostecki, here on the Money Lap Live. Welcome, my man. Congratulations. What an incredible championship. That has to feel good.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good year for myself. And g'day, guys. It's pretty early in the morning here. So to the top of the morning, cheers.
Yeah,
so I didn't know where you were. Yeah, I didn't know you were going to be over there. I thought there was a chance you were over here in America for this. So you got up early. We really appreciate that. Or up late, I guess I should say. One of the two.
Yeah, no, it's 5 a.m. here now, so it's actually not too bad.
Yeah.
I get up at 6, so it's not that bad.
So my
what's
intro's
funny
a little
is
intense for that time.
I'm going to be completely honest. I thought I knew a little bit about you, and I knew what you've been up to. I knew your success of the season, where you came from, the spot, your appearance in NASCAR. But gosh, by listening to your background and Parker doing an incredible job introducing you, I was not sure if you were going to have an Australian accent or a regular American English accent.
To be honest, it actually switches. So when I come over this year to race at Indianapolis for my one-off Cup race, I was in North Carolina again for I think 2.5 weeks, and leading up to the event, working closely with everyone at RCR and everyone at the Chevrolet Tech Center, and my accent really came back pretty quick, which was surprising. And I had some of my colleagues from Australia that I work closely with at Erebus, my crew chief or engineer, as we call it down here, George Cummins, and he was shocked. Like in 3 days, he's like, "Oh, you've completely converted. It's pretty funny in the space of 3 days." So yeah, it was I guess that was pretty funny.
When you go to welcome North Carolina, it's almost a given that you're going to adopt some sort of accent in that place. Having spent a fair amount of time up there.
Yeah, I lived in California a year first, and I didn't really have to. But when I moved to North Carolina, it was just easier to start learning the lingo.
Definitely. I want I think there's a lot to unpack with you, and especially for a lot of our listeners and viewers, in that you did have that background of coming over here to America and then back to Australia to be in the supercars. But really, just the last 3 years, you finished 9th in the championship a couple years ago. You then finished 7th, and this year, the championship. I mean, that accession, that's a pretty fast accession from, being in the top 10 to being the dominant and champion that you were this year. What made that happen? What precipitated that? What has changed for you over these years? And what have you felt like led to you being able to get this championship and find that performance?
Yeah, it's sort of a pretty, I guess, when you look back at our last stats, even the team that I'm driving for, Erebus, we sort of, we had some really good results throughout the year, but we were never really that kind of, the consistent team that was always, in the top 3, I guess, front running team. But much like NASCAR, we had a massive restructure within our series, and we got new cars. And to be honest, that really helped our team out a lot. The development costs are all gone. Everyone gets the same equipment, under them, and it's up to the driver and I guess the crew chief to, bring out the maximum, potential in that car. And, I suppose our racing down here is a bit different than the racing in America. We go to, obviously all road courses. So, and I guess we were just able to, maximize the, the car that was below us. And we had a really good year, no mistakes, just really consistent, no DNFs. And, I think I won the pole award for the year. So, qualified the best all year. And that sort of really just kicked off our season, which was awesome.
I want to talk a little bit about the difference in racing between supercars and what you've experienced in NASCAR. And obviously, hearing from SVG, I'm sure you've talked to him plenty about his experience, and even one kind of specific question about your thoughts on him winning in Chicago and your perception of that. Because obviously you watched him win, and then you made your start, and so I want to hear about all those experiences, but I'm also curious if you think, what was going on there? Did he catch us all off guard being, such a new event and NASCAR really never being on a street circuit before? And that sort of being your guys' bread and butter, like what's your analysis of that?
Yeah, to be honest, when I heard that Chicago was going to be on the NASCAR schedule, was the first ever street circuit that NASCAR was going to, and then obviously Shane announcing that he was going over. I was actually really eager to see how it all sort of played out. I knew that he was going to probably reach some sort of success, that being in the top 5 or the top 3. But these street circuits, we race at them 4 or 5 times a year, and to be honest, it's a road course, but it's honestly nothing like a road course in the sense of you go to a road course, you can you can learn all your braking markers, and there's really minimal risk of riding the car off and not being able to compete for the rest of the weekend. So your I guess your preparation and your practice time is vital to getting up to speed quick. And that's something that we have probably very good experience with, racing so many street circuits down here. So I think watching him, I watched every single session that he was in, and just watching him get up to speed, it was pretty cool to see the differences. But I don't think he'll have it that easy next year.
Hey, actually,
what do
just
you think
to continue
about the
on that,
differences in racing style there? Oh, go ahead, Parker.
I wanted to kind of go down that path of the street courses, in that you mentioned your guys' experience. I've been watching V8 Supercars and what's now Supercars since 2005, 2006. It's my favorite racing in the whole world. So you've lived a dream of mine, by the way, getting to do both. But the thing I always found fascinating was what you mentioned, which is the risk quotient that you have at a street course versus a road course, and that you guys often didn't have backup cars. And I can remember Jamie Whincup wrecking in practice one week and not being able to race in the actual race as he's going in to win. He's tear of championships, right? Over here, there's the backup car. But one of the things I found amazing was when I watched Supercars and what you guys do, there was years of touching the mirror on the wall, right? And knocking, and that meant, okay, now I'm close enough. And you guys just have such a precision ability on those street courses. Is there something driving wise? You mentioned like the risk cushion. Is there something you feel like, hey, when we go to those places, what I've learned now being a champion of supercars is that we do this really well. We do, this is what we focus on, a street course versus a road course that allows us to be so precision and to take, get to that 100% of risk without overstepping it.
Yeah, I think so. It's we just raced at Adelaide on the weekend for our season finale, which is a street circuit, and we had three practice sessions, 45 minutes each, and then 2 qualifying sessions for both races, and then a top 10 shootout for both. So honestly, we get a lot of track time at those venues, and so that allows us to I guess test the limits and build up our confidence for those tracks. But I think when they went to Chicago, it was the weather played a lot into it, and obviously it was actually pretty short track time for the drivers to actually learn the track and actually put rubber down as well, which is a big thing. When we go to our street circuits, the track will evolve a second and a half, 2 seconds just with rubber. But to be honest, most of the drivers that go to these tracks now, we're within 2/10 of what we can do on our first 5 laps. It's just you just have to get up to speed to be competitive and to get on the front side of being able to tune the car and whatnot. So that's what's pretty cool about I guess what we do down here is just everyone's just I guess evolved and gotten really confident at these tracks, and it's everyone's pushing each other.
So let's talk about this season. You obviously were the champion, and it was a very competitive season. It was the Gen 3 car you guys have. You mentioned it sort of similar to what we've gone to in NASCAR, the next gen car. But I think some of the races I watched this year were so close, and you guys are just, have some amazing finishes. What are some moments this year that just stuck out to you as you rumbled towards this championship that you're like, yep, we're going to get this thing done, and we've got the speed, and we're going to continue to show this all at the end of the season to get this championship?
Yeah, I think we have a preseason test that we have teams that are based in Queensland, which is two states above where my team's from, which is in Melbourne. And we have a preseason test, and we went to our test for our state, and we rolled the cars out, and I felt pretty comfortable straight away. And it's hard to tell at a test if what tires are people are on and whatnot, but I just sort of felt pretty comfortable straight away, and we're talking to the team, and I said, if it goes like today, I think we'll have a pretty good year. And then we went to the first track, which was Newcastle, and it's just street circuit, of course, because it's supercars. And we put it on pole for the first ever qualifying session for Gen 3, and then it was like, it's like actually pretty real, like we're really good. And race didn't quite go to plan. I think we finished third that race, but it was like, I guess that first qualifying session for the year where we were able to stick it on pole, that really sort of, solidified in me that, that we could do it if we just, I guess, if we just executed for the whole year, which we're able to do, which was, really cool.
So going back to the idea of the difference in styles between supercars and your experience in NASCAR, what's your assessment of that? I mean, obviously supercars, there's still some sort of conduct regulations, and we saw in the championship race a penalty. In NASCAR, we don't necessarily have that type of a penalty. It's a little bit different. So what's your what was your give me your experience there?
Yeah, so I grew up in, I guess, North Carolina and raced, late models and raced at Hickory, and I guess raced the ARCA series now a bit. And so when I come back to supercars, the racing rules are a lot different here in Australia. Like, we're not allowed to move someone out the way. We're not allowed to do any front to rear bumper contact at all. And if you do that, it's generally a 5 or a 10-second penalty post race, or you have to serve it in a pit stop. So but to be honest, the racing down here is pretty hard regardless. I mean, it seems like doors are open, so you're happy to door anyone, or stick it up the inside, and you're allowed to rub side to side is not a problem. But but the NASCAR guys, their rules are a lot more open, but it's built on respect. So, and they race 36 times a year, so if you wreck someone one week, you're probably going to get wrecked next week. So The racing's kind of similar in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
We're bound by rules, but NASCAR, those guys are bound by respect. So it's kind of similar in a way, the racing.
What do you think is the right way?
I think the right way is probably is probably the way that you guys do it, to be honest. I think rules are great and all, and but it's at the end of the day, it's about the show that gets put on for, I guess, the people that watch it at home and that go to the race. And there's been times this year that the races could have been better in our sport. If you're allowed a little bit of front to rear, if we're like I can block quite heavily and the guy behind me can't do much about it. So, as long as I stay within the rules of, blocking, it's pretty hard for the guy behind to do something about it, which was, Shane, one of those races. But, that's what's different, with you guys, is you've seen some of those best finishes, some of the highlight reels of some of the races in NASCAR have been, some bump and runs and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Well, and regardless of the series, with the rules or without the rules, it's funny how much moving people and wrecking, it's exciting, it's part of the racing, it happens, but boy does it look good when there's just a good, clean, hard race for the win, right? Like that's what we truly, as fans and as racers, we truly applaud that more than a wreck for the win, is just seeing a good, clean, hard race for the win.
Yeah, you're seeing it on the screen right now, by the way. You guys, you had one this year. That was a pretty clean race.
Yeah, so this was, but obviously, like you can see me, and I'm just like literally the white lining everywhere. And at the time, it's just like I know that he can't actually bump me or move me wide anywhere. And I did this for like 3 or 4 laps. But if I was to do this, obviously in America, I'd probably end up in the sand trap that's right ahead of me, straight ahead. But, I suppose like you said, it's you can change every scenario, if the rules were different. So, I guess it's hard. We have had some really good races this year, which has been really cool. So, but, like, as you can see here, he's just hitting me, but he can't pass me. Otherwise he gets a penalty. But right now he's just trying to literally heat my rear tires up so he can get by me 3 corners later, because my rear tires are melted. So I guess there is, that aspect as well. It's a bit more tactical and it's you can't really wreck someone for the win.
So he can make contact, but he just can't pass you from the contact.
Yep, that's correct. So you'll even see here, like I'll try prop him here, and he'll be into my rear bar here just while I'm on throttle, and just heating up my rear tires. So as long as he doesn't pass me, directly after contact, it can be 2 corners later. It's fine. So like even here again, it's just hard into it, heating up the rears. So.
For those listening did not see the video, this is epic. You got to check it out on our YouTube. You describing this finish. What track was this again? I can't remember the name.
So this is at Perth.
That's right.
So this is actually where I was born. So this is my hometown event. Hence why I'm white lining everywhere trying to win. But
that's so awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about the. Oh wow, you guys got into each other here as we're watching this video. It's pretty awesome. But this Gen 3 car compared to the next gen car, you've actually driven both. What's amazing to me when I watch your guys' races is how close you can follow each other. And you're not as what it seems to be as aero affected. There does seem to be some tire fall off. You are able to just continue. I see supercars races that end up with 5 cars in almost a line in a battle pack. Now look at the NASCAR Cup Series right now with this next gen car. That doesn't happen on the road courses. These 2 cars are similar in a lot of ways. There was a lot of discussion that, the next gen car was almost designed in intention to be like what you guys have in supercars, but we have not gotten the same result. Your cars also look even softer in their suspension and how they move around, more dynamic. So now that you've been a part of both, what is the big differences here? And, how do you have a suggestion of how the NASCAR next gen car could be more like the Gen 3 car at road courses?
Yeah, to be honest, that's a pretty hard one. But I think for us, our category did, we were trying to reduce the aero to be able to follow, and we've had some like awesome racing this year at a lot of tracks where we haven't been able to pass before. Thanks to taking a lot of the aero off, and And, the racing has been really good. We've had a few little dramas, with the brakes, with following, someone for 10 plus laps and, the brakes fading, just from getting hot, from the car behind. But honestly, it's pretty hard to fix that issue. When I raced at Indy, to be honest, it wasn't that bad when I was following someone, but the brakes was the biggest thing that I noticed. And it's, we run the same size wheel as a NASCAR Cup car does, and the brakes are actually very similar, if not the same, from a supercar or a Cup car. And, the Cup car, I think, is like 400-500 pounds heavier than a supercar. So trying to add all that into it, and then, the road course factor of, braking everywhere, those things just compound on each other. And it's honestly, I don't know, it's hard to build a car that's going to be good for ovals and then, go to a road course and then be, good at a road course as well, being, sort of that heavy. So, I'm not really too sure what the answer would be, but when I drove, I guess the Cup car, it was, it was a lot stiffer, and it was a lot stiffer than I actually anticipated it was going to be, which was something that really surprised me.
And one of the things that they have been looking at and they're doing right now is they're testing just removing downforce from this car, and it has an underbody aero. You mentioned the same wheel. I thought that the supercar actually had a smaller tire, though. Is that incorrect?
Yeah, so it's got a smaller width tire, but I think diameter is pretty similar to the Cup car.
Got it. And that to me, when I watch your races, the supercars, it just looks like such a dynamic car. It's moving around. You mentioned it, this Cup car was stiffer, and I guess some of it might be just even that smaller, skinnier tire that's allowing you guys to have the car wiggles a little bit more. You just don't see that out of a Cup car right now. It's a very static, rigid car that seems, and I watch your racing and I'm like, wait a second, that's the template. Just make it do that. And I feel like as a driver, it would be a more enjoyable driving experience in having it more like a supercar on a road course.
Yeah, I would say so. To be honest, I haven't driven enough of the Cup car, at different, I guess, tracks. Like I drove at Indy and I did have to start from the back and come through, but I didn't really get, I guess I actually followed William Byron for about 20 or so plus laps, and we were pretty much in line. And I guess in my category down here, we're sort of when we get behind someone, and if we have to follow someone through, we never follow directly behind someone. We always give a bit of a gap to try keep everything cool and not overheat the tires. So I didn't really experience too much of I guess the dirty air aspect, to be honest. But the only thing I really did notice was the brakes was was a big thing that I noticed at the road courses. When you're behind someone, you get what we call down here as ghost pedal, where the brakes just don't really do anything.
Landon, I think just one more thing on that and braking. So when Shane came over here, and I wanted to go down this path with you because I just find this so fascinating. And Landon and I love talking about driving. So obviously we're two drivers. We like to talk about the process as you as a driver. But one of the most fascinating things that Shane showed the world over here that we've known for a while from watching supercars, that he said we had a foot fetish in the USA, basically, was the idea that there's right foot braking. And that I think, it wasn't fair to say that, because when you look at racing over in America and Europe for the last better part of 20 years, it has all shifted to left foot braking. That has just become what the norm is. But for whatever reason, because of the differential and the design of your cars are there, right foot braking stayed prevalent. You mentioned braking, you mentioned brakes. Are you a right foot braker? Did you do that in NASCAR? Do we have a foot fetish over here? I don't know. No, I'm just saying. I'm kidding. But no, really, I'm really curious, what your style is from where you started over here in the ARCA series to then going back to supercars and then driving the Cup car.
Yeah, so every single driver in the supercars category down here, they all right foot brake. And it's mainly to do with how our car is sort of, how it behaves when you first brake and whatnot. It's very, very pitch sensitive and whatnot. So, that's why everyone right foot brakes down here. And you pretty much have to do it to be fast. And, when we go to so many street circuits and the tracks are very bumpy under brakes. So, a lot of the drivers, including Shane, myself, we, actually use the clutch under brakes to, help rear locking. at times, even when it's raining, and whatnot. And when I raced in America, on the ovals and whatnot, I was left foot braking, and I was racing late models and ARCA and whatnot. But when I come back to Australia, just you just have to right foot brake to be fast.
I think the key to it there is the clutch pedal, and I think that's why right foot braking. Outside of the use of the clutch pedal, the right foot braking does help with drivers with kind of just differentiating the pedal they're using in that little bit of period, whether you're rolling or not, rushing to throttle. But even that, I think, can be trained with the left foot braking, because I'm a left foot braker, and so I train myself to not rush the throttle or whatever. But so I do think on oval racing and tracks where the shifting is not, or threshold braking is not a factor, I do think that left foot braking is better. But for road course racing, threshold braking, by left foot braking and taking the clutch out of play, you're just giving up a tool. And I think that NASCAR drivers, if I had to make a guess on what I think happened over the last couple decades, is we don't run a lot of road courses. We didn't for decades. We only ran 2 road courses a year, right? We had road course ringers for a while come in, and they were competitive, right? Remember Ron Fellows and Boris Said, for years they would come in and they were very competitive with their style of driving. But as NASCAR became more and more full-time drivers, less road course ringers, I think our native drivers like Jeff Gordon were getting these road courses figured out. We went to the same 2 tracks every year, so our native drivers got pretty darn good at those tracks. Our transmissions improved, so you could shift without the clutch now. I think that we got lazy and just didn't train right foot braking, because we didn't need to, because our competition, none of our competition was right foot braking anymore, right? We didn't have ringers come in. And I think we just got to the point where there's probably speed out there that we weren't looking for, because we only raced twice a year and the cars were catered to us. And I think SVG was probably a big wake up call to that in Chicago, because I think the right way to threshold brake a car is to use all the tools at your disposal, which includes the clutch.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say lazy, but I would probably say, like I raced, I guess the ARCA series, I raced at Watkins Glen, and I was on the pole there by a fair margin, and I was left foot braking back then. And to be honest, like it was a 4-speed transmission, so you were barely shifting the lap. You're maybe shifting down 1 gear,
right,
or 2 gears, and that's a big thing why we right foot brake is we have a 6-speed sequential gearbox. So when we're going down into a braking zone, we're going down 5 gears, sometimes from 6th to 1st. And you need all the help you can getting down to 1st gear with the clutch, to not rear lock. So and I guess when I drove the Cup car at Indy, it's a 5-speed, but I noticed the shifting's a lot slower, and there's just because of not having that that 1 extra gear, which was that was something that was a lot different for me. So I probably wouldn't call it lazy. I would call it I guess not really a gain in the past to do it. And the brake pedal goes very long in a Cup car as well, and it would have gone even longer with the previous cars, because the braking's the braking system was smaller because the wheels were smaller. So that changes your offset from from when you get a heel toe. So there's a lot of those things that factor into being able to do it consistently. So I'm not sure how much it would be worth. Like at Sonoma, I don't know if it's actually worth a whole lot, because you're not really in too many heavy braking zones. But Chicago, I can definitely see how it's a pretty big gain.
For sure.
And there's a lot of stop and go corners, and going down 4 gears at a time.
I hate to dwell on this, but I am fascinated, my man. I've always wanted to have this discussion, so I do appreciate you indulging us with this talk of braking, because I just have one more thing to what you just talked about, and I never thought about how many gears you had to go through with the sequential box. But the thing that really sticks out to me, you mentioned pitch and like what's happening when you're getting on the brake. But, that's something you focus on the supercars. Is that something that just in your limited experience in the next gen car, and we can talk about as we go forward here, what you're looking to do in 2024 in racing supercars and coming over and doing more starts in NASCAR, are you focused on the pitch in the Cup car? And is that something that, or is it so stiff it doesn't matter sort of thing? And that sort of negates that reasoning for using the right foot braking?
Yeah, so it's, driving the Cup car is a lot different because the car makes more downforce with speed. I guess, the same with our car as well, but that car doesn't really pitch that much at all when you brake. So you pretty much, for example, going into turn one in Indy, I don't know how many mile per hour we're doing, but I know when I press the brake pedal, I'm going to have the most amount of grip because I'm going, at a high speed. So I have the most amount of downforce. So you literally just smash the pedal, in a qualifying lap. Is the best way to, extract speed out of the car, which is a lot different than, what we do, I guess, down here. You want to avoid pitch, down here. And, those cars don't really pitch too much. So it's just, the setup characteristics of the cars. And I guess that being, because it's, it makes all of its aero from underneath. So you can't have the car rolling around and soft because you lose lap time.
So one last thing before we move on here, so you're saying that in the supercars you don't have that great spike or as big of a peak, and sort of the taper in your set as we do in a car. Is it more?
Yeah, I think our cars only make, I think, 100 kilos of downforce now, which is probably like 180 pounds or something at 200 kilometers an hour, which is, 130 mile per hour. And, so our cars don't make too much downforce now. So it's literally, you're just trying to slow down the weight transfer as much as possible, so you don't lose, rear grip under brakes, and you don't obviously lock the fronts when you first brake because you're shifting so much weight forward and back when you brake. But when I was driving the Cup car, it's obviously a very heavy car, but it's very low to the ground, and it's quite stiff, in nature, trying to get the floor to work as best as possible. So that's the biggest difference.
Man, that is fascinating. I love this stuff. I know it's early in the morning for you, but you've got two very interested listeners right here, and many thousands more on the podcast and such. I want to ask, we mentioned it. So you're going to race in supercars again. There's been the talk that you're going to come over and do more Cup starts in 2024. What's your future? What's the vision for Brodie Kostecki in the years to come? Do we want to go on a tear of supercars championships, come back, try and come over to NASCAR full time? What's your vision and dream here in the next couple of years to pull off?
To be honest, I'm not really one to look too far ahead. I've, I guess, when I sort of finished up in America and come back home to Australia, I sort of just got used to just living day by day, to be honest, just trying to make a racing career, I guess. And so I've still got a lot of things that I want to achieve down here. And, I would like to win more championships down here. And, win, our Daytona 500, which is the Bathurst 1000. And, there's still a lot of boxes for me to tick down here, and, a lot of goals I want to, that I want to reach down here. But the good thing, I guess, down here is we race 12 rounds a year. So it allows me to go do, some more Cup starts and whatnot next year, which I'm, pretty excited about. And, hopefully we can get some of those finalized soon, which would be really cool. But yeah, I think it's just, I just love racing in general. And, I want to, I guess race a lot more throughout the year and just sort of fill up my calendar. I race a sprint car as well when I have time. So, I guess just race more in general and just enjoy it.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, that's the dream, man. Bathurst 1000, definitely a bucket list race for me to at least attend one time in my life. It looks absolutely epic. Before we let you go, and we really appreciate you coming on the Money Lap Live and doing this at the time of the day that it is over there. We've had a question of the day that we ask every guest, and I think you might be the most fascinating answer. So basically, if you had a choice and you can only choose one of them, driving an F1 car at Monaco or an Indy car at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval, which would you choose?
Oh, the Indy car for sure.
Wow. What's the reason?
I just I'm not really a massive F1 fan, and I think IndyCar is probably one of the best categories to watch. So yeah, definitely would rather race an IndyCar. I don't think I'm going to fit in one at any time soon, to be honest.
Very cool. Thanks for that.
That's awesome. We thought Monaco would win outright. That's now 2-1 for Indianapolis. So, my man, congratulations. You're a champ. I'll never take that away from you. That has to be a great feeling. We really, really appreciate you coming on Money Lap Live, and look forward to meeting you in person when you're back over here racing. Especially if you find yourself a welcome, I'll probably be there as well, just across the street. So we'll have to meet up sometime.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, Brodie.
Appreciate it, Brodie. That was cool. Good stuff.
Awesome.
5 a.m.
Yeah, it's great to go.
He came on.
Yeah, no, it's great to talk about that and talk about different driving techniques and stuff. Anybody who's listened knows how much we love to go into that stuff. So I know, hopefully we'll have even more conversations like that in the future with guys like him, and we'll get SVG on the show here and be able to have more right foot, left foot braking discussions.
Debate. Although he did admit we weren't lazy in NASCAR, so that's nice. I appreciate him saying that. But
I know, and I thought that was a pretty thoughtful.
It was more technical
answer. Yeah. He had. I appreciated that technical answer because, I'm probably not being fair by saying lazy. I think my intention behind it is more saying that we just hadn't been challenged, in through the 90s and 2000s by drivers like him and SVG. So we were. I felt like we allowed ourselves. So maybe that's a different way of saying lazy, and he disagreed. He had a pretty good technical reason for why.
Pretty cool guy. Obviously has a lot of racing experience and is going to continue to do a lot of racing. And that's an early time in his career to get a championship like he just did. So bright future ahead. I think we have another guest. You know that, by the way. This is a guest that we tried to have on last week. So when this man tweets, the motorsport world jumps into action. When this man speaks, the motorsport world listens. Nobody knows the money in motorsports more. It's Adam Stern from the Sports Business Show here on the Money Lap Live for real this time. Welcome to the show, Adam. We're really excited that the last time I tried that, you were there, you froze, and we were gone, and we didn't get to see you for another week. So thank you for coming on, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. So the big news that happened last week when we were trying to get you on was the NASCAR's TV deal. And we've obviously had a week to let it sort of sink in, and you've sort of had some more quotes out there and some information. So we know it's a $7.7 billion deal, $1.1 billion a year, 40% increase. But what in the last 7 days have you learned that started to stick out to you to say, this is pretty interesting about this deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the level of promotion that NASCAR is going to get now from these different companies, that they haven't had in the past. They've kind of had it split, of course, between two companies, neither of which, of course, is ESPN. That's one thing that, is maybe one drawback of the deal. You're still not going to have that promotion from ESPN. But when you look at all these new companies that are going to be promoting the sport, you're going to have the CW, Nexstar. They own tons of TV stations throughout the country that'll have, free-to-air channel NASCAR that'll still be on TV. And then, of course, you're going to add in Amazon, where you're going to have streaming for the first time exclusively with NASCAR. They've never had that in the past. And then you're going to have Warner Brothers Discovery, where they're going to have not just, it on TV and also streaming simulcast, but they'll be promoting the sport through some of their digital channels like Bleacher Report and House of Highlights, which have become some of the most kind of potent, powerful digital media platforms, really in all of sports in the world. So just kind of the way that NASCAR is going to be sliced and diced, it's kind of what they had to do to get the increase that they were looking for, to try and get more money that they can pass along to their industry. But at the same time, it led to a very interesting deal. It's going to be a little bit more complicated, or maybe even a lot more complicated for the fans to try and kind of navigate, not just the races, but you're going to have the first half of the season for practice and qualifying on Amazon Prime Video, except for 3 races, which will be on Fox. Then it'll switch over to Warner Brothers Discovery channels, Max Streaming, and True TV. So just the way they're slicing and dicing it, I think is really interesting. It's kind of what they had to do to get an increase. But in the end, it'll lead to more promotion of the sport, most likely. So I think that's what stands out to me right now after this first week of kind of analyzing the deal.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you make a good point about just all the different partners. So the fans are there's maybe a potential risk there, and just being able to find where the sport is going to be broadcast at the right time, which can have its positives and negatives because, like you said, now you have a lot of really big entities that are invested in the sport that are going to be promoting it. And I feel like in our experience, or in my experience in the sport, working with networks like NBC and Fox and ESPN at times, like these traditional networks, we kind of know, or we have experience with how they promote our sport outside of just the broadcast itself. But with a unique new partnership like Amazon, what do you think that the industry should expect for promotion from Amazon? What is that going to look like, and how are they going to elevate us outside of just broadcasting it?
Yeah, well, they have over 100 million subscribers to Prime Video, firstly, and so when you look at like cable used to have over 100 million subscribers. Now they're down into the 60, 70 range. So just from like a pure number of subscribers perspective, it kind of makes sense. But you look at what they've done with the NFL. They just had that first ever Black Friday exclusive game, and they were, promoting merchandise and some of their different items in kind of unique ways. So you kind of look at the way where even NASCAR now will be able to kind of try and sell merchandise to fans for those races. There could be some unique things that pop up on screen. But they have just a huge, of course, consumer base. So, Prime, and which of course is part of the overall delivery platform they have, and then they have Prime Video that's part of it. Again, well over 100 million subscribers. So I think just as long as they promote the sport in different ways to the people who are watching that platform, those are a lot of different people who are, cord cutters, cord nevers, people who don't have cable. So this is going to help reach people who are not currently watching Fox or NBC. And so it'll reach kind of some new folks. And then again, you have the money element of it. Certainly this was something that NASCAR did to help make sure that they could get as much money for the industry that they could. Basically a 40% increase. Some people might have wanted a little bit more. You hear some folks from some teams who said, "Oh, I would have loved that to have been, 100% increase." But the reality is that NASCAR's ratings have dropped, 50, 60% since the last time they negotiated this deal in 2013. So to get these sort of companies that still want to invest in the sport, invest huge money, look at F1. I mean, they're doing pretty well, but they're only making $75 to $90 million a year in the U.S. media rights. So for NASCAR to be able to get $1.1 billion and then have these companies now promoting them in different ways, it seems like it's a pretty good deal.
I want to compare to F1. So we did some numbers here, and I want to put context to what NASCAR has achieved with this. As you said, it's probably a pretty good deal. You mentioned Amazon, the House of Highlights. That's them potentially getting this in front of a younger audience than NASCAR has been in the past, right? And that's the intention there. Kind of like Money Lap here on YouTube. We get a very young audience. They want our audience. Over 80% under the age of 34, by the way, for advertisers out there. But we did some numbers, and I'm not going to say any of these are well done. You can call BS on them if you think, nope, that's not true. So we tried to sort of splice out the Xfinity deal from the 1.1 billion, which brings you down to 983 million. We tried to take out what we thought trucks would be. So say 23 million, $1 million a race. I don't know if that's true or not, but give or take, which brings you down to like 960 million for 38 cup races, which would be roughly 25 million per race in media rights fees. To compare this to what we could find in F1 global media rights, they're 800 million per year in global rights in 2022, but just on the media side, at 23 races, that's almost 35 million per race. So does that seem like, NASCAR has, you mentioned being a good deal. That's a pretty large number for them to get in a time when, obviously you mentioned the ratings going down, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, F1 is having this explosion in the US. They seem to have a popularity boom around the world, and it's roughly 10 million more in media rights per race. That seems like a win in a lot of ways.
There are people that are surprised kind of at the extent to which NASCAR is able to get, but a couple things to keep in mind. Of course, they have more than 2 times the number of races as F1, and their races are longer, significantly longer than F1. Now, that brings some challenges when you look at trying to retain viewers, but it gives the network such a long time to sell ads. So those are some of the things that kind of play into it. And of course, their ratings are higher than F1. This past season, NASCAR's ratings, I believe, were around 2.8 million-ish per Cup race. F1 was a lot closer to 1 million. They were above 1 million, but much closer to it. So still close to 3 times as much viewers. Of course, the one thing that F1 really has going for it is their viewers are a lot younger. So they'll have, 1.2, 1.3 million viewers in an event, but half of them, 600, 700,000, will be 18 to 49. NASCAR will have 3 million a race, but they'll still only have 600, 700,000. They're 18 to 49. So a significant percentage, a much greater percentage of NASCAR's viewership is older. So look, I mean, it is impressive what NASCAR is able to get done. I mean, their leadership team is able to extract a lot from these negotiations, get a lot for the value of the media rights. But again, there's a lot of reasons behind it. They have longer races, they have more races, they have higher ratings, they have these practice and qualifying sessions and Xfinity and truck races that draw just as well as some MLB and NHL and MLS games and things like that. So there's reasons behind it, but they certainly do a good job of getting their media rights a lot of value. And there are people that are surprised, impressed, etc., that NASCAR's media rights in the U.S. are so much higher than F1's.
And this does bring us to the idea that you mentioned, the team saying some maybe wanted more of an increase, right? One of the big factors behind the scenes with this is the charter deal for the teams and what they've been trying to do going forward past 2024. Many of the teams wanting to get a larger piece of this media rights pie, a larger amount of revenue from the sport. You even had the president, Steve Phelps of NASCAR, say that their teams were not profitable in recent years and admit that. So one thing that wasn't announced with this was a new charter deal. What's the latest there? What are you hearing? Were the teams happy about this amount of an increase? And do they expect to see some of the fruits of their labors in terms of getting a larger increase in terms of revenue from the sport?
Well, one of the major battles that NASCAR won in kind of the war of these major deals that are going to set the sport for the future is the teams tried to negotiate a deal on the next charter agreement a little bit early. And NASCAR basically said, we're not so sure about that. Go ahead, try and pull your public stunts. We'll talk to you a little bit, but we're probably not going to negotiate this charter agreement with you guys until we get a TV deal because we got to know how much we're going to get. The teams were like, you know how much roughly you're going to get. You should just negotiate with us now. NASCAR, the teams didn't have the leverage to really get that done. And so the reality is, to answer your first question, is that now is when they're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of negotiating the charter agreement, now that they've got the TV deal done. The week before Phoenix, the NASCAR president, Steve Phelps, and some of their other executives met with the teams for their regular team owner council meeting, and they discussed some of the broad outlines of what they think the deal should look like. For example, there's an expectation that maybe that NASCAR is going to try and kind of build a stronger middle class with the new money that teams are going to get, more so than give the top teams a ton of new money. I think all the charters will get more money, but you might see a greater percentage increase in kind of the middle charters. So they kind of gave some broad outlines as to, what teams can expect, but they're really going to get down to the nuts and bolts of it now because, again, NASCAR kind of won that battle. The teams were not able to force NASCAR to negotiate the charter agreement before. As far as the second question about are teams happy with the amount that NASCAR got, I think some of them wanted more. Some of them thought, hey, it'd be great to get at least a 50% increase and maybe even higher. Ultimately, it really looks like NASCAR's coming in closer to 35%-ish, but we'll round up to 40. And also there's questions about, how much more NASCAR's going to have to pay for production now. They just opened their new production facility today. I was over there at the ribbon cutting. That's going to benefit the sport in a lot of ways, according to NASCAR, but also they're going to be having to pay more for production. So that raises questions about how much that erodes some of that 35 to 40% increase if their costs are going up. So I think teams ultimately realize that NASCAR did a pretty good job, but race teams, they always want more. And yeah, they do expect that they're going to get more under this deal. And NASCAR certainly signaled that they're going to give teams more Where the rubber will meet the road is how much, the percentage amounts that NASCAR's offering, and whether teams feel like that's enough. And also, there's going to be splits between the teams. I think some teams have already felt like NASCAR starting to signal a deal that they're ready to accept, and some teams are not ready to accept it yet.
So does that mean the teams had the most leverage before this deal was done, right? And I think NASCAR did a good job of maybe calling them on that, and basically had diamond hands with their leverage, and I think that they were my gut feeling in the conversations I had back then was like I didn't feel like the teams had enough leverage to do what they wanted to do, and I one of the things that I definitely knew off of that was like part of the team strategy at the time, really a year ago, was maybe the networks, NASCAR would have a hard time signing the networks if there wasn't some sort of commitment from the teams. Obviously, NASCAR was able to push forward and completely, disregard that. So they've kind of disarmed the team. So do you feel like the potential ugly parts of this negotiation are over? Right. I mean, it was both sides. I want to say both sides. The teams were kind of talking a big game, whether it was in the public or not. I know you've had conversations on both sides, in public and privately. Do you think the ugly parts are over, given the big game that they had talked?
Yeah, great question. I'm wondering the same thing, and I'm unclear on it. So basically, it doesn't seem clear that the stunts and the ugly stuff is over. It seems like, just for example, speaking to one person last week who's close to several teams, several top owners and drivers, etc. I asked them if they thought that, the deal that NASCAR got last week with their media rights partners was going to ensure that a deal would get done by Daytona, and they said no. And so if a deal doesn't get done by Daytona, well, on one hand, it's fine because, the next deal for the charter agreements and the media rights don't start till 2025. But that'll start opening up the opportunity for teams to, potentially pull stunts on the track. There's been rumblings about things like that. Nothing's happened. But, there's been rumblings about could teams, somehow show their displeasure to NASCAR during a race. Obviously they could do things. They could do things kind of with the PR side and kind of the media side as well, as they kind of did when they held that original press conference with some media back in 2022 during the Roval weekend, when they first kind of publicly signaled that they needed more money according to them, and that they weren't happy with the current team owner model. So, look, it doesn't mean that we know for sure that things are going to get ugly, but it does seem like there's a potential divide or schism coming here where some teams feel like NASCAR's offering a pretty good deal, and some other teams, they may feel like NASCAR's offering a decent deal, but they feel like this is a big opportunity for them to secure what they need for the future, and they're not going to necessarily just agree very easily. One part of that, of course, is the charters. What's going to happen with the length of, the new term. The original deal was a 9-year deal because it was set up 1 year into the original 10-year agreements for the TV deals, and they wanted to evaluate after the TV deals. Teams want them to charters to become permanent. NASCAR doesn't necessarily agree, but I have a feeling they'll meet somewhere in the middle. There's been talk of maybe like rolling renewals or auto renewals as long as teams meet certain requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see exactly what gets done there, but I don't think we can say for sure that the ugly stuff and the stunts are over with yet.
Wow. And when you mentioned stunts, you talked about on-track stunts, that sort of thing. Has this been recently mentioned, in the last 3-6 months? And any idea what that could be? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been mentioned in the past several months. What it would look like, I don't exactly know. There's the imagination could run wild there about what it could be, about, teams stopping on the track or something like that. It feels like it's probably unlikely that they do something like that just because it would be so drastic. But, the point is that there's different opinions behind the scenes with teams about how far along they are with NASCAR, what they should do to signal their displeasure with NASCAR, etc. So there's been a lot of debate about how they should approach that. It seems unlikely they'll go that far because they haven't done it yet. And so if they didn't do anything last season, it seems unlikely that they'll do something that drastic. More likely would be things kind of more in the media scene, you know, announcing stuff, press conferences, etc. But I don't think we can rule anything out yet.
Well, they, you know, if we know a couple things for certain, obviously the team owners have toyed with the idea of running some kind of unsanctioned race or a promoted race of their own. There's been rumors of that, of, you know, all kinds of ideas and things. And then also, you know, we do know one thing, that the teams still need to show however they're voicing their displeasure, they still have to show up to the track, because they give up a ton of leverage the moment they don't show up to the track. That's when they lose their charter. And I suppose that if it came to that point where they were going to actually boycott or not show up to the track, then you're talking about a real D-Day moment. So it is interesting that if they're going to do something, it has to be pretty creative, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. They obviously, and you bring up a great point, that they had signaled that, you know, the RTA could possibly look into some off-season exhibitions. That was one of the things that they had kind of signaled, that some people said, that seems like it could be kind of a backdoor threat. So yeah, it's like you said, you have to run every race. So it doesn't seem likely that we'll see something super, super drastic. I still don't expect like a live golf sort of, or you know, IndyCar breakup situation. I think the teams recognize that the reality is that starting a new series, I mean, the NASCAR has 75 years of brand equity. Like, that's 75 years. It's not easy to just start a new series. And look at what they just got for their TV deal. I mean, F1 is on fire around the world, and yet F1's getting $75 to $90 million annually for their TV rights. NASCAR's about to get $1.1 billion. Like, so NASCAR does have some significant advantages that makes the teams probably not want to stray too far towards a breakaway series or something like that. But it will be interesting to see, because there's certainly some people who feel like, you know, this is a big opportunity for the teams, and so they have to take advantage. And if that means, you know, making NASCAR a little frustrated in the meantime, then that's what it'll take. So these next couple of months will be really interesting. Even as big as this TV deal was, now we have a whole nother really big agreement to keep an eye on.
What's the timeline for this to get done, the charter deal? What are the teams telling you they want done versus what do you think is reality and realistic?
I think that as long as they get it done by like the midpoint of the season, they'll be okay. The deal doesn't start till 2025. So, you know, can they, you know, at this point next year, December 2024, can they be here without an agreement? No, I think that'd be pushing it way too much. But it doesn't sound like they need it done by Daytona. You know, they have a whole another year at that point under the current agreement to finish that off. So I would look to the midpoint of the season.
Interesting. That makes sense. Moving on from NASCAR, before we let you go here, there's a story that's bubbling up in the F1 world. I just saw you recently had a tweet about it, and that is this political drama of Susie and Toto Wolff being investigated by the FAA. What's the latest? What are what is your impressions of what's happening here? And where do you see this going?
Well, Parker, we all know that the best drama in F1 is off the track. So hopefully Netflix, all these folks are at the ready right now, even though the season's over, on the track. Yeah, I mean, I just saw like I said, I was at that NASCAR production facility opening today, but just coming back from that, I saw that the F1 teams have all released kind of coordinated statements saying that basically they didn't tattletale on Toto and that it wasn't them. So this is just pure chaos. It's kind of typical, you know, F1 bureaucracy chaos. But yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting. Of course, there was that one report that came out from Business F1 magazine, quite interesting article saying that the team principals were upset about Toto possibly having received confidential information about the budget cap, having leaked that to the media, and then also receiving other confidential information because his wife, Susie Wolff, works for F1 Academy. So kind of explosive accusations. Of course, you know, Susie Wolf came out yesterday and strongly denied these accusations. I believe Toto and Mercedes did as well through an official statement from Mercedes. So we'll see kind of where it plays out from here. But yeah, just kind of typical F1 drama. Now they've got their budget cap. That's something that might be coming to NASCAR with the next charter agreement. So maybe we'll see drama like this in NASCAR eventually. They might have a budget floor and a budget ceiling in NASCAR come 2025. But yeah, this is part of kind of some of the drama coming out of F1 having their budget cap. And we all know, this is on one hand sensational. On the other hand, this is kind of par for the course for F1. They have stories like this kind of every year in different ways. So it's certainly worth keeping an eye on. I think one of the most interesting things out of it is that, the FIA announced this investigation, and now the teams are saying, well, we didn't even tell the FIA about this. And so now F1 is really upset with FIA. They've been butting heads a lot recently. So now the BBC coming out with this report, citing sources in F1 saying that Liberty Media might want to eventually break away from the FIA. So, in certain regards, some of this stuff is routine F1 drama, but in other ways, it's quite interesting and, certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Definitely. That is fascinating. And that's the exact discussion we just had about an hour and a half ago between Landon and I. And I think we're going to have to see as this plays out. Budget caps in NASCAR, I'd love to unpack that one. I think that's most likely a thing. But we say this show goes 12 to 3-ish. We've run past that. We do, man, this has been very insightful. I want to have you back, Adam. If you'll come back. We've now figured out how to get you on to the program. We need to have you come back, right?
Absolutely. Would love to.
Awesome. Before we let you go, we have to do a question of the day. We ask every guest this. And I don't know if you've driven a race car before, but I know you follow a lot of racing, so it'd be interesting to get your perspective on this. We've been asking, if you had the opportunity and could only pick one of these, would you drive a F1 car at Monaco or an Indy car at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval?
I heard Brodie Kostecki's answer. I'm going with Brodie. I think you got to take the Indy car on the Indy 500 Oval. Monaco's absolutely beautiful, but now we've got something crazier to aspire to. It's racing an F1 car on the Las Vegas Strip. I mean, there's no water nearby, but just the scenes are just absolutely insane. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I think obviously the Indy 500 is just one of the most incredible events, and driving an Indy car on that oval, even Max Verstappen is scared to do it. So that's how you know it's something very special.
Well said. Well said. You know what? It's unbelievable. I thought Monaco F1 would be the winner, clear, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is now, 3 for 4?
Clear head.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, it's a lock now because it's 3-1. Yeah. I guess it could tie depending on our answers. So
we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. Adam,
clearly ahead, right?
Appreciate you coming on. We're gonna definitely have you back, but that was really amazing stuff. We appreciate it. Have a great day, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
So we have gone a bit long here. For our podcast listeners, you're now listening to the longest Money Lap podcast in history. Episode 33, we went big. We say there's always a big episode. This one is ginormous. Landon, we always finish with a little bit of our favorite topics, our hashtag topics. I think we should just do one today. We can get the boys' opinion on this real quick. But really, instead of doing the weeklies, right? Let's just have the question of the day. Let's just get everyone's answer, see what wins. That's the thing to do here. You think?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first here. I'm our guests have all, really made me feel like I've really underappreciated Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Maybe it's because I've already driven on the track and raced in the Brickyard 400. Now I know we're talking about an Indy car at Indianapolis. I'm presuming on Indy 500 weekend. Man, the more I say that out loud, the more attractive it sounds. So I think I get it. Another little nugget on that point. Adam brought up, Vegas as a comparison to Monaco. I feel like the F1 and Monaco purists have got to hate to hear that. And he's not the first person I've heard that from. I feel like I read some comparisons and people trying to compare Vegas as maybe like the next new Monaco Grand Prix. So that's interesting. My initial gut reaction, again, probably because of my personal experience, I've experienced Indianapolis myself. My gut reaction was, damn, I want a chance at Monaco. So I would love that. But where I made a note earlier, I think I want to take a Miata around Monaco first. Just like the way Brodie was talking about the riff. Yeah, I think I need a little bit of seat time first around the circuit. I don't think Monaco's not on iRacing, is it? So
no, it's not.
It's gonna be tough to get some prep time, and so I think I want some laps in a Miata around the track first, and then I'll give it a run in an F1 car.
Wow. So did you make a choice?
I'm going with Monaco. I think that where I wanted to now, what I will say again, I know we're clear out of time, but what I will say is I think you could handicap it a little bit and get me to choose Indy. So if we're talking about you're getting, is it a starting grid spot in the Indy 500 versus test laps around Monaco, or is it, I think we could handicap this to get me, and it wouldn't take much to get me to lean Indy, but right now as it is, I'd love to drive an F1 car around Monaco.
I am just going to quickly say, now I want to bring in the Gen Zers. They're no longer the boys. They're just the Gen Zers, by the way. We want to get their quick opinions on this. But to me, what was fascinating about this question is that an F1 car at Monaco would be really tough the first time you drive an F1 car to really extract everything from it, right? So you're not getting the greatest experience of what makes an F1 car, which is the braking capability, the turning, the amount of grip it makes in the corners. You're never going to get that. So that's incredibly hard. But like you said, you've driven the Indianapolis Oval. I have. I've actually gone flat out around the Indianapolis Oval twice in a stock car when we had the high downforce in 2019. And then
I've done it too.
In turn one, qualifying in the Xfinity car, I basically went flat out.
Yep,
I get what that would feel like 60 mile an hour faster, right? 50 mile. But I don't know what an F1 car feels like. And Jenson Button once said, the slowest F1 car you drive will still be the fastest car you ever drive. So I'm going to go F1 at Monaco. That ties it up. Where's the Gen Zers? Bring them in. Bring them in here.
Yeah, quick answers here. What do you got?
So I guess my first question is it a modern F1 car, or do I get to choose which F1 car I'm taking around the track?
Modern F1 car.
Ah, damn it. Okay. I think I'm still choosing the F1 car. Merely because I could really use a vacation to Monaco. That sounds a lot better than going to Indiana.
You have to go there.
Also there's a lot to do in Monaco, casinos, all that stuff, so there's a lot of fun things around there.
Okay, so your interests have nothing to do with driving. Okay, I get it.
All right.
Kyle, what's your answer?
Hold on.
Let's get a real racer in here. Let's
whatever.
get a real racer in here. Kyle, what's your answer?
Look, I love Monaco. I love getting up in the morning and watching on the greatest day in motorsports. But growing up, born and raised in Indiana, it was only ever Indy. It has to be Indy. Can confirm we don't have much more than corn, but it's got to be Indy.
Respect. I got respect for the purist.
I love that.
Yep.
I agree with that. All right, Gen Zers. So that basically, I guess Monaco wins though. If Josh wanted to go to Monaco, so we flipped it, or is it a tie? I can't do the math here. What do we have? We have 3 guests say Indianapolis, 1 guest say Monaco. Us 2 said Monaco. That's 3 versus 3.
I think it's
Josh
4 for Monaco. I think it's
tied it up. It's tied up. I just did the math live. Thank you. After 3 hours and 12 minutes live on the internet, we have done the math perfectly just to figure out that the question of the day is tied. Everyone likes motorsports. I love that.
That's great.
Shit.
Comments.
Guys, major apologies because it seems like we've run out of time. We can't have Kyle Busch on. So we'll have to try.
Sorry, Kyle.
See if we can get him on next week. Sorry, Kyle. Thank you all for watching and listening. Next week is our final Money Lap Live of the year. So send someone a holiday note. It might just save their life. This was a fun show, guys. Thank you so much. Peace.